Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow underway on this Monday edition. Glad you're with us across OutKick. That includes our YouTube channel right now, outkick.com and more. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Big show today. Andy Staples joins us in an hour. College football discussion, transfer portal, bowl games, college football playoff, a lot. Plus, Bobby Carpenter later in today's show, talking all things football. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Ready to rock and roll today.
Good to be back.
Good to have you back.
Plenty to discuss. The Bills seem to be back.
They do.
Routing the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, we've seen Pittsburgh drop 3 straight. They're making another quarterback change. We'll see Mason Rudolph start for Pittsburgh as they will take on Cincinnati in Pittsburgh this upcoming week. And, well, right now Pittsburgh sits 16th or 17th, I believe, in the NFL draft. They don't seem to be making the playoffs. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. Pittsburgh's known for being an organization that is great at hiring coaches and never, ever letting them loose unless it's retirement. And some fans are upset about this.
Well, it's not just
With
fans. You know, I've seen a lot of media speculate that he is firmly on the hot seat now. Peter King, one of them, in his column, saying that he was a terrible coaching job yesterday with some, not yesterday, but Saturday, with some of the decisions made, and that he is his seat is heating up. This is crazy. Okay, Mike Tomlin is 51 years old. He's in his 17th year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has won 63% of his games in 17 years. Worst season, as Hutton said, is 8-8, 500. Did that 3 times. Now, if you want to say he won his one Super Bowl in 2008, and that was a long time ago, and the last time he won the AFC title was 2010, a year they lost to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers in the Super Bowl, okay, fine. But there's a lot to be said about consistently winning and consistently being in the playoffs. And consistency is what this Pittsburgh organization is all about. You don't throw that consistency in flux to fire a 51-year-old head coach that could be there for the next 20 years possibly. And also a guy who's going to immediately get a job elsewhere and probably do a really good job against you. He's not going anywhere. You get rid of Mike Tomlin, he's not taking a year off.
No.
He's getting offers immediately to be someone's head coach. So I think it's nuts that people are even insinuating, Peter King and others, that he's on the hot seat. I don't see it. I see no reason why. Hutton, to me, Mike Tomlin is the model of consistency for an organization that is the model of consistency. Now, does it look like they made a bad pick with Kenny Pickett at quarterback? Does not look great right now. And if you don't get quarterback right, you're not going to be anything in the NFL. They got to get quarterback right. I don't know yet definitively 100% sure that he's not going to be a good quarterback in the league, but he's off to a rough start. And that's why the Steelers are having a rough go of it right now.
What they don't look like is your typical Mike Tomlin team dropping 3 straight in this regard. Effort. Did you see George Pickens on that run play? His effort blocking downfield?
Really bad.
That's a Mike Tomlin team right now. That play is representing what's happening. And I laugh at the fact that he could be on the hot seat. I'm with you. But Peter King's not writing that. He's not saying that, putting his name behind it, unless he's hearing something like that, because it sounds so stupid. Right?
Yeah.
That's how. Right now they're 7-7, losers of 3 straight. Probably not making the playoffs. Good luck based on their upcoming schedule, which also includes Baltimore, who will be battling for the number 1 overall seed in the postseason.
They still play Cleveland once, right? Or they played them twice
They
already?
have their upcoming schedule in order: Cincinnati, Seattle, and Baltimore.
Okay. I kept thinking about a Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett reunion after the incident years ago if they were to play each other.
Right,
but lucky for Mason Rudolph, that game is not happening.
So Tomlin's admitted that it's a fundamentally poor football team right now, is what he said post-game. They were sitting at 7-4. Now they're at 7-7, and they've lost to the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Colts, who scored 30 unanswered points on them. And it's more about Pittsburgh than it is those teams. It's about their effort and mentality. And I still laugh at the fact that it could be Tomlin's hot seat. especially looking around the NFL at all of the coaches who just aren't that good and are coaching bad football, known for calling plays, and then they become a head coach and they're no longer what got them there, doing what got them there. Tomlin's been there and done that, 16 seasons. Timelines do play out, but this one is far from being over, unless Tomlin's wanting out for something that's going on behind the scenes. But he's got, as far as ownership is concerned, organization is concerned, one of the most, if not the most stable right now in the National Football League.
What was the YouTube chat is fired up about this and asking about the USC rumor a few years back. And the quote from Tomlin was something like, there's not a booster on the planet rich enough to pay me to go coach in college or to take that job. I think it was Mike Tomlin who said that about the USC job at the time.
Maybe he was adamant.
He's an NFL coach.
He called it a joke. Here's the quote. Hey, guys, I don't have time for that speculation. I mean, that's a joke to me. He went on to say he's got one of the best jobs in football. Why, he goes, why would I have any interest in coaching college football? And that will be the last time I'll address it. Not only today, but moving forward. Never say never, but never, okay? There's not a booster with a big enough check.
That's it. Not a booster with a big enough check. That was the quote from Mike Tomlin. He's an NFL guy. He's an NFL coach, and he's not going to have to coach in college.
Right.
First off, he's made enough money that if he wanted to go coach in high school, he could, just for fun. He can do whatever he wants at this point, but he's going to have another job. Regardless of what anyone thinks about the job he's done this year in Pittsburgh, and it's not been great. I'm not going to sit here and argue that he's done a terrific job this season.
Canada, right?
They fired Matt Canada for a reason. The biggest part of it was offense. Now everything seems to be falling apart a bit. He's got to get that under control and figure that out, but he is the guy to figure it out. You're not firing Tomlin and trying to let someone else figure it out. You're giving him a chance to right the ship and get things moving in the right direction. And if you let him go, he is hired immediately. Immediately. But every other team is lining up to try to hire him.
Yeah, that would be another trade speculation situation for a NFL coach.
How many of the 32 NFL teams, fan bases, would love for their team to trade for Mike Tomlin as an upgrade for their coaching situation right now? All but 4 or 5, maybe? I mean, it's probably that high of a percentage that would want Mike Tomlin over their current head coach.
Davey's raising his hand a couple times here. What do you have, Davey?
Do you guys know the last time the Steelers won a playoff game?
It was, has it been a decade or so?
2016.
7 years.
I can understand why their fan base is starting to feel that it might be time to look in another direction.
Well, if they do, fine. It can be a lot worse than that. And all you have to do is look around the league and see all the examples of teams that aren't going to the playoffs at all, much less winning a game. So, Look, I look at the market, and I see a guy in Mike Tomlin that is going to be a coach somewhere else immediately.
Yes.
Right? This is always the argument with Mike Vrabel with the Titans. Oh, well, if the Titans get fed up with Mike – the Titans suck right now, okay? The Steelers are better than the Titans. The Titans suck. But Mike Vrabel is seen as this great head coach that's going to get a job somewhere else. If that's true, you have to factor that in if you're the Titans. And by the way, I believe that to be true. I think there are other teams that would want Mike Vrabel if he were on the market. So you got to factor that part of it in too.
I would be shocked if the Rooneys fired him. They did fire, though, a coach during the middle of the season. They're a lot like Chicago in regards to that.
Yeah, and again,
letting go coaches based on performance.
If you think that he's bad for that stat that Davey just threw out, that he hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, then go poll other owners across the league and find out how many would raise their hand to at least explore the option of trading for Mike Tomlin. If you were the Steelers, you're saying he's not going to win big here anymore, let's just float the idea that we're going to trade him. Watch all the hands pop up of teams that would trade for Mike Tomlin.
For the sake of just making sure we give both sides to this argument, George Pickens has to give effort.
Yep.
Jaylen Warren needs to play more. He needed to play more last year over Najee Harris. And Harris has been better this year. But why they refuse to not work him more into the offense is beyond me. The short yardage situations for the Pittsburgh offense embarrassing. And losing to these three teams that they've lost to, the best being Indianapolis, the worst being New England, but also losing to Arizona, that is a new low for Tomlin. But when we're talking new lows, the bar is much higher for the low water mark than what we've seen at other organizations.
If you can win over 60% of your games as a head coach in the NFL, that is a Hall of Fame clip. He's at 63% over 17 years. That has to matter. That has to factor in. Now, if you want to take the Davey approach and say because he hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, he's never going to do it again for Pittsburgh, fine. But if you do that, then I think the option would be, Hutton, you trade him because he's going to fetch a price instead of just firing him. Now, I don't know does he have a no trade situation? I doubt that with Pittsburgh where he'd have to get fired. I'm sure he's probably got to sign off on something if they were to make that happen.
Sure, yeah.
But he's got such market ability where you can get something in return. You got to explore that option instead of just letting him go.
Well, and if you're Pittsburgh, you also know this offseason there's going to be a lot of names in the coaching carousel. He's at the top of that list. Belichick, whenever he's gone, it'll be Belichick and Tomlin. And this is not the offseason to fire him. Now, the talk has been
I would want Tomlin way before Belichick.
Well, because he's
51 years old.
Right.
That's the only reason. I'm not trying to compare resumes and say Tomlin's better. I'm not dare going to argue that. But right now, if I'm hiring a head coach hoping for the next 7 to 10 years,
right.
I'm hiring Mike Tomlin and not Bill Belichick.
I'm just thinking of the reasons. The idea that, God forbid he has a losing season for the first time in his career is all of a sudden warranting hot seat speculation is ridiculous, especially when we're comparing the other coaches that are in this pool.
If Pittsburgh fans are driving this deal and they want that to happen, look, I'm on the side of you're insane to fire him, and I don't think the Rooneys operate that way as an ownership group. Now I'll flip it this way and say, for those Steelers fans that are complaining about Mike Tomlin, now imagine if you didn't have the Rooney family ownership situation. How many other NFL teams would love to have that ownership situation?
No doubt, man.
And the way they approach things versus the rest of the league. I would be thankful that you're special in that way. If you're a Pittsburgh fan and you're that organization, they do things different from the rest of the league. And it's served them pretty damn well as an organization over the years. And again, we're playing the game of polling fan bases everywhere. Give me 17 years without a losing season. This is year 17. 16 years with no losing seasons. How many fan bases would raise their hand and say yes? And getting a Super Bowl in that time, too.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes. I would caution Pittsburgh fans that are ready to jump off a ledge to understand what you could be asking for here. And what you could be throwing away.
Again, just to emphasize this again, the point Peter King's not putting this in the column.
No, I agree.
Unless he's
that's
hearing
why that's why I wanted to address this early, because I respect Peter King, the work he's done for 4 decades in the NFL.
Yes.
He's got connections. He knows his stuff. I read his column weekly for a reason. So when he's putting that out there, and I think the line was Mike Tomlin's seat gets toastier by the week in Pittsburgh. He's not just saying that to say it. He has spoken to someone. I think that someone is crazy if they're considering actually firing him. But this is not me calling Peter King crazy.
Right, yeah.
I think there's a reason he's putting that in there. I think they'd be crazy to fire Mike Tomlin.
This isn't a message
they being
board
the
post.
Rooney family.
Even though sometimes those turn out to be true and accurate as well, the message board posts. Chad, the Eagles made a change in defensive coordinator in Week 15. Matt Patricia's now calling plays for Philadelphia. We'll get to that coming up as well. But that's a big change for a team that's on the path to another Super Bowl appearance, potentially. And Jalen Hurts is questionable going into the game this evening. What would have happened this weekend? Round 1 of the college football playoffs. Next year, it's going to look something like this. I can't wait for the bracket to actually be unveiled a year from now and have the weekend that we did not have and have not had in the past. Liberty taking on Florida State. in round one. Florida State hosting the game. You've got Ole Miss and Georgia on the opposite side of the bracket as a 6-11 matchup. You get a rematch for the first time since October, end of October. It's a bloodbath type game, and Georgia rocked them like 52 to 20 or something. Yeah. You've got Penn State at Ohio State. Another rematch. I love the rematches in round one with the host sites. Love it on campus, especially so you don't get them in the semifinals or something. Maybe you do down the path. Missouri and Oregon would be awesome.
Yeah, that's the one that excites me. I don't like the rematches as much, and this is a year where it just happened to work out that way.
By seed.
Where you have a couple of them. Still good games and better than lower end bowl games that we're getting right now. Missouri at Oregon on campus in Eugene, fantastic.
They've only played one time in their history.
Sign me up for that. That is what I am hopeful the 12-team playoff produces. Cross-regional matchups with teams that normally would never face off, that get a chance at each other, where one is going to a campus they normally would never visit and playing a big-time win in advance type game. I want to see more of that.
And there's no question that in the college basketball tournament, they seed based on storyline.
Oh, yeah.
We will see that, too, for the first round, where you're not just slotting based on bowl appearances, but the college football playoff appearance. Alphas and betas of the weekend, straight ahead on Hot Mike.
McGregor for president in Ireland. What do you think? The UFC star has floated the idea of running for office in the past, but now seems more serious than ever. This week, he took to X and explained why he would be a better alternative than the current competition if he runs. He looked at all of the candidates, and he said all of them with unbreakable ties to their individual parties' policies, regardless of what the public outside of their parties feel. Now, these parties govern themselves versus govern the people. Then you have me, 35, young, active, passionate, fresh skin in the game. I listen, I support, I adapt. I have no affiliation, bias, favoritism toward any party. They would genuinely be held to account regarding the current sway of public feeling. I'd even put it all to vote. There'd be votes every week to make sure. I can fund. It would not be me in power as president. It would be the people of Ireland. It would be me and you. Honestly, from these two posts alone, he's already said more to me. I'm not a resident of Ireland. I won't be voting in this election, obviously. But as someone who would be voting in any type of election, this is the type of things that I would want to hear from a candidate. So even though I won't be voting, he's got my attention. He's speaking very thoroughly, very eloquently. I respect everything that he's saying so far. Now, McGregor has also been outspoken in recent weeks about the politics in Ireland following the stabbing of 3 children in Dublin, in which the suspect was claimed to be a foreigner. Now, the UFC star had a lot to say about Ireland's immigration policy, which occurred simultaneously, you can remember, with the mass riotings, which allegedly landed McGregor in hot water, with tabloids reporting that he's being investigated now for inciting and hate speech, which, of course, makes absolutely no sense and paints an even poorer light on the politics going on in Ireland currently. Now, according to a poll that he put up on X, it seems like people are really taking the prospect of his running for president seriously. He asked people that if he did run, would they vote for him? The answer overwhelmingly was yes. There was nearly 220,000 people voting at the end of when this poll closed. Connor came in with 88% of the vote. Honestly, again, I've already mentioned that I think he'd be a good candidate, but why not? He's already truly laid out such an eloquent case for himself. He is fresh skin in the game. He has no self-serving interests. As a former UFC champ in the lightweight and featherweight division, which, by the way, he was the first UFC fighter to ever hold 2 simultaneous titles, he knows what it means to fight and also to win. That is a mentality that not everybody has, but not everybody can have. And also, he's young. He's outspoken. He's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. And he has been showing us sports fans that for years. He's a proud countryman. He already has made plenty of his own money. So there is no need to get involved in shady politics or corrupt deals. And actually, it reminds me of somebody else who used to be president. Not in Ireland, but here in this country. Ringing any bells to any of you out there? In fact, I actually remember Conor McGregor calling Donald Trump the USA GOAT on MLK Day back in 2020. Listen, that says a lot about what he looks for in a politician, and I can imagine would hope to emulate one day if the occasion does indeed arise.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mile with Hunt and Withrow here on the OutKick Network. And starting January 3rd, the only place to catch OutKick's original and fearless shows live will be on our website. You head over to outkick.com. You'll be able to catch up on YouTube after we are live. But for all the live unfiltered content, you'll head to the Watch tab at outkick.com. You won't miss anything there. In 2024, outkick.com/watch. is your one-stop shop for all things OutKick. That's outkick.com/watch. Did you see, Chad, where Patrick Mahomes actually said, we beat a really good team today? Discussing the New England Patriots.
I understand showing respect, right? And not, this is what gets me every time on these. I understand showing respect and not disrespecting an opponent,
Yes.
and taking the old Coach Lou Holtz approach of talking them up a little bit more than maybe they should. If you wanted to say, it's a talented team, they've got some good players, that's fine. But we all know when you're just going way too far over the top. And this is one of those cases.
Yes.
Also, this is one of those that fails to really work me up too much. I don't really care because I just know it's someone that went a little bit too far with trying to show respect to an opponent.
Yeah.
And who cares? I'd rather, if I'm coaching a team, I'd rather tell my guys, hey, let's talk this way about our opponent instead of going the opposite way and maybe being a little bit too honest at times. So I got no real beef with Patrick Mahomes.
It's just funny, the cliches that are thrown out. And to all the discussion about the sideline interviews and everything at the podium, too. I mean, you could play a cut from coaches or players for that matter and ask, the game could be, is this from 2021 or 2023? You wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
It's also sad to me that Andy Reid has to show mercy to Bill Belichick and doesn't tack on a late touchdown out of respect for Bill Belichick. And I think that's just, even Bill Belichick would say, that's just stupid. This is just kind of sad, like to pander to that, right? And I just, the whole thing is very odd.
Did you know the line closed at 10.5?
No.
Kansas City won by 10.
We were talking about Peter King earlier and how he's starting to speculate that Mike Tomlin's in the hot seat. He also wrote today, he said, I'd be kidding if I said I knew anything about New England. I know what's been reported out there. He said, I am hearing nothing, one way or the other. He said, it would not surprise me if they, quote unquote, part ways into the year. If he comes back, none of that would surprise me because it's just radio silence from New England's end. And I think, that is the perfect way for the Patriot way, right? That there's less information coming out about all of that.
Isn't it also, though, what we're not hearing is peculiar? It's sometimes you do hear from the owner that says, you get the dreaded vote of confidence, right? Which Arthur Smith had already received prior to what Atlanta has recently done with the Falcons. But we're also not hearing a lot about Gerard Mayo, which is odd. It's been about Vrabel.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
And I'm just trying to connect the dots why you maybe don't know which way this could turn out is because we don't know who Robert Kraft is trying to trade for or talk about. Again, just trying to figure out why it's hard to actually pinpoint what will or will not happen on that Black Monday or potentially afterwards based on trades. Alphas and betas of the weekend. Chad, for whatever reason, there are those that cover the league that still refuse to acknowledge that Brock Purdy is he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Let's just say that. He's not the best. I'm not drafting him number 1 overall or number 2 or 3, but he is right there. And number 1 overall right now in the MVP odds in Vegas, Brock Purdy. They continue to get it done. They're back in the playoffs, clinching it, and he's the driver of the car. The engine is through McCaffrey and a number of other players, but Purdy is doing a ton more than what we've seen from previous quarterbacks that have been there.
And you can tell when teams gravitate towards the alpha at quarterback.
Yes.
And they love him and they play for him and they respond to that alpha in a certain way. That's Brock Purdy. I watch the way that 49ers offense rotates around him and interacts with him, and I'm thinking that is a leader, and that's a guy that has full confidence from his teammates at all times. That's alpha-like quality. That's Brock Purdy. And look, just because he's not, and it wouldn't be for me either or anyone, he's not going to be the first guy taken in a schoolyard game of football. If you got all the NFL players together, not one of the top draft picks, doesn't mean that he's not the top pick for MVP this year. And Vegas odds are starting to swing his way a bit. So just because he's not the first guy you would take on your team doesn't mean he's not having an MVP year. He is. That's how great he's been for the 49ers. And that's why he's an alpha of the week.
Let's also just quickly mention, he is saying that he believes Christian McCaffrey should be the most valuable player. He said Christian deserves to work. Quarterbacks normally deflect and give credit to other players and then take the blame. I know that. But the fact that he is up for the award and number 1 in the odds, and he's still pointing to the running back that's doing it, that's why there will be those that say, well, it's all more about McCaffrey than it is Purdy. I would point to, what was going on last year, the 10-0 run, and while McCaffrey certainly traded there and is playing well, it's more about the quarterback that took over instead of the quarterback they had.
And I'd point to the fact he's simply making those comments as another example of his leadership and his alpha-like qualities. That's what a leader at quarterback does, is defers to other guys and gives them credit. So I love that he's saying things like that.
Chad, Ole Miss gets it done in the transfer portal. What is going on in Oxford where they continue to they pull in players that I would expect wouldn't be going to Ole Miss if they're choosing to play in the Southeastern Conference or any Power 5 right now?
It's incredible. The number 1 and number 2 edge rushers in the transfer portal are now going to Ole Miss. One from Florida, one from Tennessee. Walter Nolan. I mean, their defensive line, defensive backfield, Tamari McDonald from Tennessee also going to Ole Miss. Alphas of the week, Lane Kiffin in the transfer portal mixed with the Ole Miss Grove Collective. Because whatever they're doing in NIL, and this is no longer taboo to say, I'm not going to have someone go half-cocked and go nuts over me saying this the way Jimbo Fisher did when Nick Saban dared to say that they were paying guys to go to A&M, right?
Right.
They're paying guys the right way at Ole Miss. Whatever formula, whatever code they've cracked on how to go get some of the best players in the transfer portal, it's working at Ole Miss. This is a top 15 program nationally right now with Lane Kiffin as head coach. They are a perennial favorite to get into the playoff right now in a 12-team playoff. They're one that can get in there at the very end. They're going to continue to do that if they plug and play guys to this level. Great work in the portal by Lane Kiffin. Oh, by the way, don't look now, but Deion Sanders is compiling a ton of dudes out of the portal also, which we expected because they weren't recruiting as well for high school players. And Ole Miss lacks in that department a little bit too, but doesn't matter as much when you go get all SEC-type players out of the portal every year.
Props to Walker Jones, who was a guest on our show, right? Jones?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right, from the Collective.
From the Grove Collective. And Kiffin's also, he's leading the charge at SEC Media Days, talking about trying to curtail the rules a little bit, bring it back down to earth. I mean, they're getting all the quarterbacks last year. Now it's about defense.
Well, Lane Kiffin is sending trolling posts on social media from a hotel in Knoxville where he's camped out for over a week, and he leaves with 2 starters from Tennessee's defense.
And posts a photo with one of them at the airport.
Right. In the portal, headed over to Ole Miss. So kudos to Lane Kiffin. Whatever he's doing there, whatever that collective is doing, it's working. I'm not here to hate on it. These are the rules of the game right now, and they've perfected the game a little bit better than most when it comes to getting big-name targets in the portal.
The Baltimore Ravens, they've led in the final 2 minutes of every game this season. Only the 1972 Dolphins and the 2007 Patriots did that throughout the entire season. A great stat there from Talk of Fame, which is, I believe, let me double check who's Clark Judge is the creator of this. Great job on that stat. Chad, the defense is the reason why. They've been in some tight games. They've lost in some blowouts. They've also won in that fashion. But they have a Super Bowl caliber defense that's backing up Lamar Jackson, who's also on the MVP hunt.
Yeah, it's impressive. And we keep trying to, or at least I do, who is the favorite in the AFC? Who's the best team? And it seems to change weekly. The most consistent has been the Baltimore Ravens. If we're looking start of the season to now, sure, they've had a couple hiccups here or there, like every team has. But if I'm looking at who's been the best all year in the AFC, it's the Ravens. And boy, were they impressive last night on Sunday Night Football, just really suffocating the life out of Jacksonville on the road in that game.
Chad, to the betas of the week, I have no idea why Arthur Smith will not get the football to Bijan Robinson for the Atlanta Falcons. Apparently, he's safe. He's going to be back. And he's coaching for an owner whenever he was hired after he was working here for the Titans.
Well, they said barring complete collapse.
Barring complete collapse.
Does this qualify as complete collapse?
Losing the way they did, sure. But barring complete, they have time to not collapse.
Well, they got 3 games left, and it's not going to get any easier than playing the Panthers.
Well, that's true. By the way, the crowd there was awful.
Oh, and the weather was terrible
like a game
too.
at Vandy.
But it was friends and family only. It looked like an AAU basketball game where just the parents show up. That was the crowd in Charlotte.
Barring complete collapse, this has not been a path to a postseason appearance, but they're in the division where they could have been and have been with a chance to do so. The question I've got to have answered if I'm bringing it back is, why is the top running back not getting touches? It's not hard if you say, well, it's just, wide receivers not getting touches. Well, that's just how the offense plays out based on our progressions. If you want the running back to touch the football, that's the easiest part of the offense to put the ball in the hands for, other than the QB. And we're not seeing it. It's crazy.
I fear that Arthur Smith lost his job yesterday. And that was the first thing I thought of was that quote in that report, that barring complete collapse. And I'm thinking, boy, 1-win Carolina and losing to them 9-7 in that fashion, where Desmond Ridder, I don't know why you ever trust this guy.
Yeah.
Especially in clutch moments where you need someone to not make the mistake. He seemingly always makes that mistake. And to lose that way, now they get Indianapolis, who's playing really well right now. They go to Chicago and to New Orleans. If you're going to lose to Carolina, I don't know they're winning any of those 3 games. They probably will. And if they do, maybe he's back. But if they don't, he's gone. I mean, that is the complete collapse. Losing the last 4 games, one of them being Carolina, that's going to do it. And I had a bad feeling when that game ended. We're seeing the last of Arthur Smith as head coach in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost to the Cardinals when Kyler Murray came back. They've lost to the Titans in.
Well, they let Will Levis go off in his first ever start.
Yeah, but they're also winning close games. Texans, Buccaneers, Saints. That's where they've picked up their victory. The Commanders beat them. They've lost to bad teams, and they've won against bad teams because they're also one of those just bad teams right now. Another one, Pittsburgh. Just based on the play of the team, not even the results at this point, based on the injury at quarterback and what we've seen. Chad, this is it's a Steelers team that is reeling. Losers of 3 straight. We're in the playoff mix now, no longer. The Bills are hot. Pittsburgh is not. And they lose. They now have Cincinnati coming up, and they finish the season against Baltimore. It doesn't look great for Tomlin's group.
Yeah, and the play by George Pickens we referenced earlier, there's an identity issue going on, and that's the last thing you want. And that's one that I defended Mike Tomlin to open the show. He's got to fix that and figure that out because he is the one constant. He is the one anchor for that franchise in the locker room where they know what they want from their players, and they tend to get it. They're not getting it this year from some guys. They've got to reverse that. And he's going to have an offseason, I think, to do that. It's probably not going to get fixed in these last 3 games, but he's going to have to figure that out this offseason with guys they bring in and who they decide to retain on that roster, because right now is not good enough for that organization. Or quite frankly, that lack of effort, that's not good enough for any organization. He's got to figure that part out.
Yeah, the offense is averaging 15 points per game over the last 5. They've lost 4 of their last 5. Chad, the Titans' offensive line.
What an absolute
pathetic
train wreck.
7 sacks allowed.
It's not just one thing. It's not one guy getting cooked on every play, not being able to block someone, one guy having a career day. There were plays yesterday in the second half of the Titans-Texans game where the entire offensive line just immediately cratered around quarterback Will Levis, immediately caved in, and he had nowhere to go, no ability to try to get out of the pocket because there was no pocket. The pocket closed in around him. This offensive line and the Titans for putting this group together and on the field at the same time, F- on both accounts. And now what they've done is cost this organization a chance to continue to evaluate the young quarterback because Will Levis has a high ankle sprain, much like Ryan Tannehill a year ago. Hutton, I don't expect him to play much these last 3 weeks, and that's a shame.
Chad, Derrick Henry, 20 touches, less than 10 yards rushing. Less than 10 yards rushing.
Lowest output since 1948, I'm being told, for someone with that many carries.
Behind that offensive line. Coming up, that's my quarterback.
So in 2019, Sean McDermott, talking to his team in training camp, gave a really stupid analogy. I mean, really stupid. He was talking about 9/11. He was talking about how well coordinated the attackers on our country were. And he was trying to make a reference about communication. He was trying to make a reference that these folks communicated well to one another. It's totally idiotic. I mean, I don't give a damn whether they communicated well. I don't give a damn whether or not they synchronized. I don't care. They were criminals, terrorists, at that got the absolute, whether the absolute worst of the worst. And I get a little fired up and I stumble over my words. I actually had stuff written down for this, but here's the thing. You got to understand when you're speaking in public, I don't give a damn if you're trying to make a cute analogy. You never used Hitler. You never use 9/11 terrorists. They are the worst of the worst, period. There's nothing good about them. I don't care. You know, how many times have we heard people talk about Hitler and say, yeah, but no, there's no yeah, but. When you do what these folks did to people and families, our country, other countries, you simply never praise them ever. You're not being clever. You're not being smart. You're not making a great analogy. You're being an insensitive clown. And I never use the word insensitive. I don't. I honestly don't. Insensitive to me is meaningless. Let me change that. You're being just a moron. Don't do it. It's not smart. It's not clever. It's not, well, look at how he. No. Horrible human beings. You never reference John Wayne Gacy or Dahmer or Manson. Never. In no way, shape, or form. Now, having said that, hey, how about we get over ourselves? How about we get over what happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago? And here's the deal in sports, and I've told you this before, okay? There's always the list. And when things go bad, here comes the list. So all of a sudden now, the Buffalo Bills are struggling. All of a sudden now, Sean McDermott's leadership is being called into question. And all of a sudden now, something that McDermott has apologized for, both in front of the team and to his bosses, 4 or 5 years later is being brought out. Now, that's ridiculous. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do stupid things. At least that's what the preacher tells me on Sunday. At least that's what when somebody in church, Traders Point Christian Church, says, hey, look, if you've sinned, raise your hand. And everybody raises their hand and the preacher says, yeah, I did too. We're all sinners and we all demand forgiveness, except when it comes time to actually forgive and forget. We never do that. We just can't. We won't. We're so full of crap. We just are. And you can act and say like we aren't, but we are. Who here hasn't sinned? Cast the first stone and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, we're all sinners, boy, when somebody does, particularly in sports, particularly when they're losing. We can't wait to jump on them.
We are live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Honey Withrow rolls on. Head over to the OutKick store. Plenty of merch there. You can outkick.com/shop.
So much merch.
That's right. Where you shop.outkick.com is where you go, actually. Shop.outkick.com. You got the polos, the hats, shirts, and more. All shop.outkick.com.
Cups.
And you've got plenty
There's a cooler
there
cup on there
with the 50% off if you buy two.
So much. So many TVs here at 6th and Peabody also, and we are on the televisions in here today.
That's right.
Getting some texts and some messages for people seeing the show out in the barroom area. So that's always nice to see.
Shop.outkick.com. You got the buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. Yeah, we've got the TV screens out there. We were on the one outside, but on the days where it's cold and rainy, well, we're moved in, and now we're just in there full time. It's great.
Well, we always know that there's like a music act coming in at
Yeah,
6th and Peabody
yes, yep.
when the guy in charge of the sound just walks over to our entryway to our studio
Yeah.
and just lightly knocks with our laptop to hand back to Matt over here. I know, like, that's the signal that they're firing up a band or something outside. Like, dude, here, take your laptop. Show's off for right now. We've got some.
When Corey comes back, he's like, "Hey, here's your stuff."
We've got a Clint.
Move,
We've got a
leave.
Clint Black cover band that's going to be here from 4 to 6 p.m. So you got to take this now.
Yeah, the late Joe Diffie cover band coming in.
Yeah, these guys play everything Randy Travis ever recorded,
Yes,
and we
yes.
need you guys off the screen right now.
Well, we're not going to see Aaron Rodgers. That idea that he was going to come back and finish the season. December 24th is the date he threw out to Pat McAfee, and then there was a report out after that visit that he was trying to return by Christmas, and then McAfee asked him again about it recently, and he said, "Oh, those are just speculation and rumors." Okay, it started through him. The Jets, though, are out of playoff contention. The Dolphins took care of them. That means the results take care of the idea that Rodgers was even going to try to return. My assumption was he was going to be activated, but that didn't necessarily mean he was going to play unless it was a 8-9 seed currently trying to get in, or they were trying to hold on to a 7 seed. That's where they were for a few weeks midway through the season. But this is a foregone conclusion based on where they were. There was no need to play him if you know. We do know he's coming back next year, and you want him completely healthy. But he gave off the perception that he's back. He was back on the practice field, and Chad, he was setting records in the rehab time.
Yeah, I mean, this is now his way of saying, "See, I told you so. I'm back quicker than anyone else." But business decision, guys. Psych, not going to play because no need to play because we're out of the playoff hunt. It was kind of an odd set of circumstances for Zach Wilson yesterday. First off, speaking of bad offensive line play, the Jets were as bad as the Titans offensive line-wise yesterday. Zach Wilson was terrible, but he got no help in that game and no blocking. But I saw one report that a Jets PR person told a reporter that Zach Wilson was fine. He just left to go to the locker room because he was dehydrated. So he left to go get hydrated. And then it said, but now he's not going to re-enter the game in the second half. And I'm being told it's because of his head. And I read that and I'm thinking, head is in like he in his own head doesn't want to get back out there and play behind that offensive line. He's refusing to return.
Right.
Or is he hurt in the head? And now it comes out that he's in concussion protocol. So I would caution reports like that until we know what's going on, because I can't be the only one that read that. And I'm thinking a Jets PR person is telling you that he's fine. He's just not coming back on the field, and he had to go get hydrated at halftime, but yet he's not going to play again. And it turns out the guy's in concussion protocol. Boy, it was one good half for Zach Wilson against the Texans the week before, and then right back to the same old misery for him in that offense.
It's not uncommon for guys to go get an IV. Especially at halftime. And offensively,
but it is uncommon for him not to return after the IV at halftime.
Right, but
way he did.
But if the report is he's still in the locker room getting hydrated, I don't know who had the ball first in that game. Maybe the Dolphins had possession to begin the second half. That's what I would assume if I'm on the sideline trying to report on it. However, if he's in concussion protocol, they have to announce that. If it's coming from the PR staff, that's just totally inaccurate. He's not getting an IV if he's in concussion protocol.
To me, you're talking to the wrong PR staffer, and the Jets PR team needs to get on the same page. If anyone's going to talk to a reporter or anyone that has anything to do with the game or covering it, you need to know what's happening and know what you need to be saying, and that was a missed opportunity by them.
Plenty of backups across the league, but the starters and the best of is where we'll start. It's time for That's My Quarterback.
It's my quarterback.
What's up, guys? The first thing I'd like to say is the PR team for the Jets, they're going to have to be putting out some work discussing why the team did not go after Joe Flacco. As you guys talked about last week, it was in their backyard. Decided to go elsewhere. And
they traded for him. What was it, two off seasons ago?
Yeah.
When they traded for him? Gave up like a third-round pick?
Yeah, and old Joey Flacco's looking good.
Yes, he is.
Guys, right around Thanksgiving, last time on That's My Quarterback, we talked about the NFL MVP race. And when we did that, you both went with Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen's been battling some injuries, and his odds have started to slip. So kind of wanted to go back to that well. And before this weekend, Dak Prescott was the favorite, but that poor performance in Buffalo has done a bit of damage to his chances.
Yes.
So right now, who do you all see being the NFL MVP?
I think there are three candidates. I think Hurts is one, and Brock Purdy certainly is as well. Lamar Jackson is going to have the MVP finish set in front of him based on their upcoming schedule. And he's already starting to regain that hype based on Sunday Night Football last night. I think Jackson, based on where Baltimore's going to be, the perception of how deep the talent pool is in the AFC that started in the offseason, he's helped out by the fact that a lot of starters are injured, and he's going to have to beat out either an injured Jalen Hurts, which happened last year, and Hurts didn't get the vote at the end of the year, or Brock Purdy, who is already admitting at a podium that Christian McCaffrey is the NFL MVP. And those votes that, if you're looking for a reason or a tiebreaker, goes to Lamar Jackson at that point. That's the perception of Purdy. I'm not saying I would vote for Brock Purdy. I think Lamar Jackson's going to win MVP.
I tend to agree with Hutton on Lamar Jackson, but
by the way, we will see Baltimore and San Fran head-to-head.
I'm not going to make the mistake of going against Vegas again. I didn't understand how Michael Penix Jr. was not the favorite going to the Heisman ceremony.
Yep.
And it turns out Jaden Daniels was an overwhelming favorite for a reason, because he won and Penix finished second. Slight favorite right now for Brock Purdy. So I'm just going to go tie goes to Vegas right now. And now that the Vegas betting odds have shifted a bit in Purdy's favor, on this Monday, Davey, I'm going to go with Brock Purdy as my answer.
Baltimore at San Francisco, Christmas night, Monday Night Football this week.
Could decide the MVP award.
And it also could decide who wins the NFC. Because
for the NFC.
Yeah.
You said, AFC or NFC?
The NFC. But I guess the same for the AFC as well, because Dallas and Philly don't have the tiebreaker. But if San Francisco wins out and the Eagles win out and San Francisco loses, then the Eagles would actually get the one.
Ravens finishing schedule, just for the MVP discussion. 49ers on the road, home against Miami, home against Pittsburgh.
Gonna have a chance to see him a lot.
Yes.
With
the
some
next
big
2
games.
weeks are crucial. If Baltimore's got the seed locked up for whatever reason, he probably doesn't play in the final week of the year.
Guys, all the teams we just mentioned, they have their franchise quarterback. For our next topic, this team doesn't. So instead of giving me just a quarterback, which team, it's time to give up on their current franchise quarterback?
The Atlanta Falcons. If Arthur Smith has a future in Atlanta, I don't think it needs to be with Desmond Ridder. He proves time and time again he is not the guy. He has had flashes this season, and it seems like at times Arthur Smith's at least public display of confidence in him has paid off some this season. Did not pay off yesterday in a 9-7 loss to the awful Carolina Panthers, who had one win coming into that game. Atlanta needs to move on. Time to give up for the Falcons. Time to give up on Desmond Ridder. My hope is that doesn't also mean it's time to give up on Arthur Smith. But with that loss yesterday, if that continues, it may end up being time to give up on both of those guys.
I want to say Kyler Murray for my answer, but his contract is very difficult to just say move on. They would need a trading partner post June 1st for the salary cap hit to go down instead of up. They're screwed this year. This offseason, I mean. The answer for me is in Seattle with Geno Smith. Loses a 4 straight. He's been banged up recently, but still not the season that they were hoping for in terms of trying to compete in the division. San Francisco's already locked that up. And the contract allows for an out, even though he signed an extension this past offseason. They gave him over $20 million in a signing bonus. But they have an out going into the offseason where they will take a salary cap dead hit at around $17 million. It's a lot. It's a cap hit that's steep, but it's not one that's steep for starting quarterbacks that you just gave an extension to. Moving forward, they'll be paid more, but they put this in case they want to move forward and bring in a Ryan Tannehill or a Kirk Cousins or hit them in the draft. I think Geno Smith is playing for a different team in 2024.
Well, guys, I mean, the best place to go if you need a franchise quarterback is the draft. So as we turn our attention to the 2024 NFL draft, who will be the first quarterback off the board not named Caleb Williams or Drake May?
In reading all of the quote-unquote gossip and rumors, J.J. McCarthy's a first-round pick. I'm sorry, but the perception from Heisman voters is all they do is run the football at Michigan. The NFL perception is Jim Harbaugh's offense is tailor-made for quarterbacks that want to jump in the NFL and start immediately. And I see and read a lot, Chad, of, well, Jaden Daniels is this, and they're looking around trying to find the third best quarterback and maybe a high ceiling, maybe a low floor. Teams also just go for safe and steady. And I think J.J. McCarthy is that. He's efficient, he's accurate, and he runs an offense, even if his head coach isn't on the sideline.
Yeah, I looked at, I think it was Matt Miller's first mock draft, and he's got McCarthy at 7th overall.
Wow.
So that's a good spot right there. I think he's got Jaden Daniels at 4th overall. I'm not going to overthink this. Jaden Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner. I think he's going to be the first one off the board outside of those two.
Bears at 1st and 5th right now. If the draft were to happen today, how crazy would it be to see J.J. McCarthy? They trade out of that number 1 overall spot, but they sign Jim Harbaugh, and then they let him go and get his current quarterback.
Be interesting. Bears are playing better, which is shocking to me, but that's a team that looks competent the last 4 or 5 weeks
when
of
Justin
the
Fields
season.
got back,
Justin Fields has looked pretty good.
Yep.
So I don't know that they're going to be looking at quarterback.
That's going to be one of the big
I've
offseason
maintained
questions.
I love Justin Fields. I just think they've screwed him over with talent around him for the first couple of seasons. It should have been much better this year. Should have been.
And the question is going to be, do you decide to go ahead and give him that contract or try to build around and start on a new rookie? They definitely have some of the most intriguing questions to enter this offseason. But guys, speaking of the offseason right now in college, it's all about the transfer portal. And new team, new impact. Which guy is going to have the biggest impact at the quarterback position going into next season?
I'll be brief on this one. It's Riley Leonard. Notre Dame got it wrong with Sam Hartman, and it's no knock on Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman does not offer them a running threat. Riley Leonard does. That's going to make this offense pop. Gerard Parker, the offensive coordinator at Notre Dame, took the job a couple of hours ago at Troy. They now get to sync up an offensive coordinator hire with their quarterback in Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard is going to be a difference maker and a stud for Notre Dame's offense this year. Give me Riley Leonard.
Chad, I'm going with Malachi Nelson out west for USC.
Who doesn't have a home yet.
The end of the day,
Does not.
Yesterday, I think.
Okay.
His news came out. Yeah,
entered
or
the
Saturday.
portal. And number one in the nation in the last recruiting cycle was committed to Lincoln Riley, not committed to USC, but followed as well to back up Caleb Williams. He says he's out. Wherever he lands, he's a game changer. And you better believe some of the SEC schools that are looking elsewhere are looking into him, same as the Big Ten, and he will transform that offense that he chooses. And I think he's a young quarterback that sticks around.
Yeah,
further.
he's a multi-year option for someone,
Right.
too. It's more than just 1 year with him.
Got to pay him.
Someone will.
Eddie Staples joins us next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number one overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only one or two. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that. Second hour is here. Hot Bite with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us as we broadcast on this Monday edition. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Plenty of headlines. We'll recap more of the NFL coming up. Bobby Carpenter will join us in about an hour and 15 minutes from now. We'll talk all things college and NFL with the former Cowboys linebacker and Buckeye. And right now, we say hello to the college football insider for On Threes, Andy Staples. Nice enough to join us. Great to see you, Andy.
Appreciate to be the warm-up back for General Bob. He's a national treasure.
No doubt. We always enjoy your visits. And man, Chad, the transfer portal is to say it's hot is putting it lightly.
Well, I feel like there's a number of players that wherever they start in the SEC, that's just their warm-up act for Lane Kiffin, because eventually they're all going to end up in Oxford playing for him. Andy, what a weekend for Lane Kiffin and the Grove Collective and everything they're doing there, and a program that's now cast itself in a role of playing the portal better than most. I'd put Kentucky in that category. Certainly that's how Deion Sanders in Colorado is trying to go about it also. But specifically with what Ole Miss is doing, what are your thoughts on their weekend?
It was pretty impressive. So what Ole Miss did is something that you're not used to seeing, and that's kind of revamp their defensive line through the transfer portal. They got Tyler Barron from Tennessee, who's an edge rusher. He's got one more year of eligibility, who, it kind of overshadowed by Pierce last year, but still had 6 sacks, was a productive guy in the SEC. And then you add in Princely Umanmielen from Florida, who was Florida's best edge rusher and was one of those guys that, when you saw him and Trevor Etienne go into the transfer portal from Florida, you thought, this is not looking good for Billy Napier. But Umanmielen is a guy who can really give Ole Miss something it hasn't had in a while. And then the thought is they're going to get Walter Nolan as well. He's the defensive tackle from Texas A&M, obviously was a big-time recruit coming out of high school from the state of Tennessee, and he is potentially going to go to Ole Miss. And if he does, and that's a pretty unusual thing to get 3 guys on the D-line through the portal that seriously upgrade your talent, because that's a position that you really just haven't been able to get that level of talent out of the portal. And if you do, you might get one guy like that. You don't get multiple guys like that, because you've seen teams try to revamp at the line of scrimmage through the portal, and it usually isn't that effective. But these 3 guys, it would upgrade their defensive talent on a team that already brings back most of the offense from a 10-win team this year.
Did they have any quarterbacks enter the portal, Chad, that you know of, Andy, of the group they brought in last year or the year before at Ole Miss?
Well, Spencer Sanders only had 1 year left. And Will Howard had just transferred from LSU, so it's not like he could go anywhere. Although I guess we'll wait on that federal court ruling. But I think that's part of the strategy for Lane Kiffin is that if the transfer rules do hold up in court, and we'll see about that. But if they do, you've got to sit out on that second transfer if you haven't graduated. So Lane Kiffin getting these guys where they can't hold him hostage at the end of the year. They can't be like, listen, I need a bigger bag or I'm leaving. Where are you going to go? You're not going to sit out, and he knows that.
Where is Malachi Nelson going to go? From USC to where?
Good question. He was not what they thought they were getting. He's the number 1 overall recruit. And I'm telling you right now, if he'd played like the number 1 overall recruit in practice for them, he would be succeeding Caleb Williams as their starter. There's a reason they went looking in the portal for quarterback. So it's one of those things where they did not feel like he was ready to come in and start. So I don't know where he winds up. That's going to be an interesting one, because, the last time you had somebody like this, who was a highly recruited USC quarterback who was getting pushed out by somebody better coming in the transfer portal, was Jackson Dart, who wound up at Ole Miss. So let's see, does Lane want another one? I don't think he has room, but it worked before.
Eddie, what's the perception of that to you, knowing that Lincoln Riley is the quarterback whisperer with what he's done, and the fact he gets the number 1 recruit in the nation that he doesn't want now?
Well, quarterback recruiting is a very volatile thing, and it's sort of like drafting quarterbacks. Half of them bust, and you just have to expect that. Like I always tell people, don't fall in love with the quarterbacks your school signed, because 3 out of the 4 of them are going to leave. Only one of them is going to stick and be your starter, and then another one may come in from somewhere else and be your starter. But don't fall in love with some quarterback that you've never even actually seen play, because you don't know. I kind of trust Lincoln Riley's judgment when it comes to quarterbacks. I don't know if I trust it when it comes to defensive coordinators, but I definitely trust it when it comes to quarterbacks. And if he feels like Will Howard or somebody out of the transfer portal is a better fit for what they're doing, he's probably right.
Does Kyle McCord to Syracuse surprise you at all? And what does that tell us about Kyle McCord as the player, if anything? Or this may have just been more of an opportunity play for him, but that did surprise me a bit, Andy. I thought it was going to be, there's very few. You're not going to go to the same program as Ohio State. I get that. I didn't think he was going to fall to Syracuse, though.
Well, it is telling, because when you jump into the portal, if you're one of those guys that all the coaches are regretting missing out on, or when they scouted you, when they were playing against you, or when they were playing against a team that you played against, they would all jump in. I'll give you an example. So Jared Verse, the defensive end at Florida State, he transferred from Albany. They who played Syracuse that year was all over it, because every time they turned on Syracuse tape, Albany was one of their early season games. So all these ACC teams saw Jared Verse and they're like, who the hell is this guy? We got to get this guy. Well, Kyle McCord's got a lot of tape. So the fact that you didn't see every school jumping in on him should tell you something.
How about Colorado? We shouldn't be surprised, right? Or should we, with what Deion's doing?
Well, what are we surprised by? What will we be surprised? Because he's taken offensive linemen out of the portal, which he said he was going to. The problem is we don't know if any of those guys are going to be any good.
Yeah.
Like, again, that's another position where you've got to hope that they congeal together and they play well together, but you don't know. I mean, because you're taking, Indiana's starting right tackle. Well, Indiana wasn't very good. Indiana didn't have a very good offense. So what does that mean? You're taking a guard from UTEP who, by all accounts, was very good at UTEP, and a lot of people wanted him. The one that I think is most interesting for Deion isn't out of the transfer portal. It's that he got Jordan Seaton, the number one overall offensive tackle recruit. That was interesting, because you got to get some guys like that. If you want to build a good offensive line, you got to build through high school recruiting. You can get some stuff out of the portal and fill holes. Like Michigan's a great example. Last 2 years, they have taken a guy out of the portal and made and plugged him in as a starter on their offensive line, and it's worked out great. It was Olu Olatimi at center last year, Ladarius Henderson at left tackle this year. But everybody else they had were people they recruited out of high school that they built up. That's how you get a good offensive line. So the fact that Deion went out and got the guy everybody wanted, and this, Jordan Seaton was high on Oregon, on Tennessee, Ohio State wanted him. Like, everybody wanted this guy. So that's a telling thing, probably more than what Deion's doing out of the portal. What he's doing out of the portal is a lot of trial and error, which is what a lot of other people are doing in the portal.
Yeah. So breaking from On3 Sports just a little while ago, it's official. Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson officially in the portal now. We all know the stats. We've seen him play at Arkansas. What type of market do you think is out there for KJ Jefferson, Andy?
I think there's quite a few schools that would want him. I don't know that that he's an upgrade, like that he's upgrading necessarily from Arkansas. He may be paralleling or going a little below where you would consider Arkansas to be. So I talked to our guy Pete Nakos, who is our transfer portal guru, and I said, who do we think for KJ? And Tulane, Houston, Cal, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Mississippi State, schools like that. So that's what you're looking at for KJ. And those are all places that need somebody right now. And that's the thing. He's got 1 year left. He's got to go somewhere where he's going to start. He's not going somewhere where he's going to be thrown into a competition for the job. Those are all places that if they take you, you're going to be their starter.
Andy Staples, our guest. Andy, gut feeling, and you probably know more. Is Jim Harbaugh bolting for the NFL this offseason?
I don't know. I mean, I think he wants to. I think he's shown the last couple of years that he wants to. But the question is whether anybody's going to hire him in the NFL. I think it's interesting how he gets looked at, and people say, oh, he's difficult to work with and blah, blah, blah. So what? He took the 49ers to 3 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl. Like he's clearly good at the job. But, it seems like the hang up in this contract extension in Michigan is he going to sign something saying, I'm not trying to go to the NFL this year? And, we look at the jobs that are going to come open. The Raiders are already open. The Panthers are already open. I don't know that anybody really wants the Panthers job, but the Raiders job could be attractive. And if the Bears job were to open, because they're probably going to have the number 1 pick because they got the Panthers pick. I think if you're him, like Michigan's not going to get rid of you. Now the NCAA stuff, we'll see how that goes, but I just hang out, coach the team in the playoff, see if I get an NFL job. And if not, sign that big contract in Michigan and then let all the NCAA stuff sort itself out.
We know it's an all-important year for Billy Napier at Florida going into next season. How is the offseason going for him right now? When you try to measure high school recruiting right now versus who they're losing in the portal versus who they're going after, how is it going for Billy Napier?
Well, I'd say that it's a net negative in the portal so far. They've they actually got a few portal commitments in the last 2 days, but none that match the talent level of like a Princely Umanmielen or a Trevor Etienne, the guys they lost. And so that is not particularly going well. The high school recruiting, we'll see. It looks like they might lose some of the guys from this class, like Xavier Filsaime is a safety from Texas. The thought is he's going to flip to Texas if he hasn't already, but he hasn't said it publicly yet. But the thought is that he's gone. But if they get DJ Lagway, who's a quarterback from Willis, Texas, who is highly rated by every recruiting service, this is a guy that has just risen steadily through the ranks. And he looks like he could be a guy who you could build a program around. Now, again, like I said earlier, quarterback recruiting is a complete crapshoot, but he does seem to be the guy that a lot of people wanted. And so far, they've been able to lock him down. Texas A&M made a push when Mike Elko got hired. Baylor didn't give up. Clemson didn't give up. But I think after he visited Gainesville this weekend, and it looks like that's pretty much settled, and he's going to sign with Florida. LJ McCray is the number 1 edge rusher in the country. That's another one where it's still in contention, where Auburn and Florida State are trying really hard. It looks like they're still going to get him at Florida too. So that would be 2 very big high school recruits. The question is, and this is an interesting, more philosophical question, less about Billy Napier and more about just kind of everything in general. Can you do that now in this era? Can you build through high school? Will people be patient enough? Because if you look at Florida's schedule next year, they're not gaining back through the portal what they lost. The freshman class is good, but those guys, you're asking a lot if you're expecting them to contribute a ton year one. Is Billy Napier even going to be around to coach them if that's the case? And that's he may have just come like 3 years too late in terms of era. Like the way he's been trying to rebuild Florida would have worked 5 to 10 years ago. I'm not sure it works now.
App State and Miami of Ohio played in an absolute monsoon on Saturday. 12 combined fumbles between the two teams. I could not take my eyes off of this game, even though at times you could barely see the action on the field. The rain was so hard in that game. Was that a thing of beauty to you, Andy, or was it a complete eyesore?
So I live 2 hours north of Orlando. The same storm was hitting my house. And I'm watching this game on TV like, how are they playing in this? Poor Chris Budden, the sideline reporter, like, how is she doing this?
And it never let
nobody in the stands.
Not once did it let up.
It was awful. It was sideways rain for 3 straight hours. And God bless both those teams. And that's when people say there's too many bowl games, I point them to stuff like that. I point them to like Jacksonville State winning New Orleans Bowl on a walk-off and everybody going nuts. Like, no, it means something to those people playing. It gives us something to watch. And I'm with you. I could not take my eyes off it. And like I said, God bless all of the Appalachian State and Miami of Ohio players for just continuing to play through that slog.
As long as it happened on the perfect weekend. That's why too.
The amount of times, Hutton, that the center didn't even really snap it. Like, it was raining so hard and it was in the mud. The attempt to snap started, and the ball just did like 2 revolutions backwards in the mud, and guys are just going after the ball, and it's a rugby scrum for it. I saw that at least 3 times.
Backyard.
Well, 2 for one team, 1 for the other.
As someone who grew up in Orlando and had some high school football practices in that type of weather, I can tell you it's half unbelievably fun and half miserable, because you smell so bad. And like the slip and slide aspect of it is great. That's the MLS team stadium, so it's natural grass. So you've got some mud in that situation. The mud's part of the fun too, for the linemen, not so much for the skill guys. They hate it. But yeah, it gave me some flashbacks. Let's put it that way.
Andy Staples, our guest. Always great to catch up with you, man. Thanks for the insight today, and we'll continue to love the show on YouTube.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andy.
Check out Andy Staples on YouTube through On3. Fantastic work there. Chad, coming up, we've got, the portal is draining talent for sure. In the group of 5. The Power 4 draining the group of 5. But I have a flip side argument to this as to why there's a trade-off for me. And I'm willing to accept the fact that where I went to school, they're losing their good players to better teams.
It depends on certain things, but I feel like now it's like a teammate. Like, that should be your partner, your teammate. Like, I'm not cleaning all the house all the time because I'm not your mom.
I agree. We're double income, no kids, so I really like a partnership, but I don't want to take the trash out.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to do that.
She takes the kids, I provide. Very traditional.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that more young people should do that?
Yes, very much so.
What is it about like a motherly quality that you like?
It's worked for thousands of years and it still works today.
I like being girly. I'm a girl and I like being girly, so I like traditional to girls.
Okay, well, according to the 7 Hermetic principles, one of those being the law of gender, gender manifests on all levels, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all levels. Throughout the cosmos, there's gender. I don't know, it's a lie. It's a book I read called The Supreme Way of Men or Women or something like that, and it spoke on how whether it's 2 women or 2 men, there still has to be someone who's masculine, someone who's feminine.
What would you spend on an engagement ring?
I'm not an engagement ring type of person. But if she wanted a ring, I'd probably spend like 20 on it.
20 what?
1,000.
20,000. That's a lot of money.
Hey, and shit.
You don't get that lady a real answer.
No, for real. Ain't it how much you make though?
Price, I didn't really care. Size, absolutely. Had to be big enough it could be seen, and I didn't want like a basic ring. I wanted like eclectic, like vintage looking. Okay. So we did a custom order to do my ring.
I didn't have a preference. I just had a gold preference, and he kind of took it from there.
And you trusted him. Did he crush it?
Oh yeah, he crushed it.
I've been spoiled thus far, and so I don't think I could ever go back from what I received last time.
Okay, so high standards. That's good. What are the standards?
Okay, it was 5 carats.
Okay.
And it was beautiful.
Mine was way too expensive.
What's way too expensive?
Like $45,000.
Okay.
Wow.
You probably went with a real diamond.
Very much so, yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of a flex for the guy? Like, is the engagement ring, is the engagement ring only for the girl, or do you get to watch other people look at your girl's ring?
Solely for the girl. Solely for the girl.
You don't get any enjoyment?
Couldn't care less.
Red flags in dating, because obviously you found each other. Did you have any icks that you overlooked, or is he perfect?
No, he's perfect. We had a nice night out at the bar. Fought over a toy shark, and that's how it all got started.
What don't you like? Red flags?
Cheating, lying, stuff like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are you looking for in a woman?
Honesty, respect, in love for herself.
Some green flags are loyalty and trustworthy. Red flags are seeking attention from other women.
Jealousy, probably biggest thing.
especially being around other girls all the time and having other girlfriends. That would be the number one thing, is jealousy.
Red flag is they're on their phone too much. Green flag is they're on their phone a lot with you.
Well, look for loyalty. That's it. I'm 24, so it's hard to come across that like when you're young. So that's really all I look for, really, honestly.
What were deal breakers?
If she was broke, I know that sounds crazy, but for real, if she was broke, cause like it's like, yeah, like I don't want to take care of a motherfucker. Like I want to equal.
Sixth and Peabody, our broadcast location. Yaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, where you can catch the OutKick studio and Hot Mic with Head and Withrow across the OutKick network. We'll get to a name that Chad brought up just a moment ago with Andy Staples in just a second. But a reminder, if you're catching OutKick content starting January 3rd, the only place to catch OutKick's original and fearless shows live, it's going to be at outkick.com. You click on the watch tab there. You can also bookmark this, outkick.com/watch. That'll be your one-stop shop for all things OutKick. That's outkick.com/watch. You can still catch content on demand through YouTube. Crazy that Kyle McCord lands at Syracuse. Right? Like I'm thinking he's going to the portal. He's going to land at a program that's competing at a higher level than Syracuse. And he didn't. That is, I keep going back to Ryan Day and the pressure and the fact that if you don't beat Michigan, you're on the hot seat there. And he loses again. Nothing's happening this offseason. But, I mean, Cam Ward, yeah, that's obvious, makes obvious sense. But, Chad, I mean, the fact that Kyle McCord is built up as the next guy, the heir apparent, the next franchise quarterback for the Buckeyes, and he lands at Syracuse, that's not the perception that I would be wanting to give off. No offense to Kyle McCord. I just figured he's better than that.
Well,
or to Syracuse.
I would assume, too, I want to save this for Bobby Carpenter when he joins us, because Bobby was the first one that I saw that said publicly that the Kyle McCord thing is just Ohio State believing in what they have on campus more than him or any other possible portal guy. And I'm thinking, if that's the case, then how did Kyle McCord start all year?
Right.
Why would you not want the guy who just started for you all year that you deemed better than everyone else, the starter, as opposed to a true freshman that's coming in or someone else on that roster, unless you're going to tell him, hey, thank you, but you can start looking elsewhere now. We're going to go add a stud in the portal. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So we'll get to the bottom of it with Bobby Carpenter coming up. But I'm the same way. I was surprised it was Syracuse. The parallel was the word I was looking for that Andy Staples used. I wasn't looking for a parallel jump. There's very few that play in the same ballpark as Ohio State as a program, so I wasn't expecting him to go to Georgia, right, or Michigan or Texas. But I wasn't also expecting Syracuse to be the landing spot. I don't have the same
vibe that I had with Spencer Rattler, who went from Oklahoma to South Carolina. That's not a parallel program, but it's, to me, not the same immediate reaction that I had, which is, what?
Well, and look, doing what? I know people are going to respond to this and say, well, Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016. Nebraska made sense to me for Kyle McCord.
Yes, okay.
It is a Big Ten program that's got history. It's got a big fan base. They could have been something with Kyle McCord. Now, we know why that's not happening, because now Nebraska's about to land the number one quarterback at a high school in Dylan Raiola. It's all but done. He's not going to go to Georgia. He's going to end up in Nebraska. It did not work out with Kyle McCord there. But that would have been a predictable move in the way of what the program looks like. Syracuse is a bigger jump down than what I was expecting for Kyle McCord. No knock on Syracuse. And keep in mind, McCord's also looking at opportunity and seeing, hey, where can I go and start where I know I'm going to be the starter? And maybe Syracuse was the best of a few options for that. But all of that does surprise me. So I'm going to ask Bobby Carpenter about it later on just what's going on with Ohio State and what they're doing.
Plenty of discussion about the portal itself and whether or not it's good or bad for college football. It's not a great thing by any means for the group of 5 teams. Middle Tennessee, you could look around to go to several others as well. Even some of the programs that don't make bowl games on a consistent basis are losing players to the Power 4, Power 5, however you want to look at it. Trent Dilfer's on the end of things at UAB by saying, hey, if Alabama comes calling and they want so-and-so, more power to the player if he's going to make some money on his path to the NFL. I'm not going to stand in the way or complain about it. I get that. I like that, putting the player first, because in many instances, that's what the portal's for. And with NIL wide open, of course there are going to be Power 5 teams. They're going to be able to give that player much more than the group of 5. In this case, just the example, from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham, UAB compared to the University of Alabama. But in 2021-22, during that transfer portal cycle, there were 123 group of 5 scholarship players that were able to move up to the Power 5. Last year, that total almost doubled to 239. And now we're looking at even more. The talent drain is happening. But as I contemplate whether or not I really am upset about this, I think about what the portal has done for college basketball and the tournament. What did we just see in the Final Four? Am I willing to make that trade where there is more parity in college hoops than ever, and it seems as though the 8 seed playing the 3 seed is right on that play? The 14 in the opening round. We're seeing more and more upsets and more competitive games. I love it. And if you're able to play your way up into the group, from the group of 5 to the power schools, more power to you. But you should be getting more high school players because the portal is taking up scholarship spots and scholarship opportunities where you're trying to get and improve immediately compared to work a guy in and enhance his overall skill set for some other program. Am I wrong in thinking I'll take the trade and take the college basketball tournament and what we had?
No, you're definitely not wrong. And there's no stopping this train of Power 5 conference schools taking what they want from FCS level, from group of 5 schools in certain circumstances where the best 4 or 5 players on all of these teams, if they're good enough and they get the call, they're going to accept the call and move up and play at a bigger program. And that's unfortunate for those programs, but it is the way that it's going. Davey Hudson brought this up on Friday. We didn't get to it then. Davey, you've got sort of an outside-the-box idea on how to handle this issue with group of 5 call-ups.
I do. And whenever you look at the 4 major sports at the pro level across, the NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB, the NFL is the only one that doesn't have a farm system. And we always just say, well, college is the farm system. So what's to take that next step further and group of 5 schools partner with a Power 5 school as a farm system? Now, the idea that made me think of this was Tennessee, they were recruiting a guy, tight end named Eccles, and he ended up signing with South Florida. Well, the thing about South Florida is Tennessee's offensive coordinator from 2 years ago ended up taking that job. And so with them taking him, I was thinking, this kid's not ready to play at the Power 5 level, but what's to say he's able to develop in that system that they run at Tennessee and they also run at South Florida. And then in a year or two, Josh Heupel just goes down to his former buddy and Alex Golesh and is like, hey, we can give Eccles a better opportunity moving forward from an NIL standpoint, and it's also going to be an immediate help for our team if he pans out into a great player. So what's to stop other schools from starting to take that approach? And also, when you just look at the coaching trees that have spanned out across college football, there's all these relationships, and while you'd never have anything officially on the books, I could just see it being one of those unforeseen or unintended consequences that happen for the world of college football moving forward.
Look, I think it's a total grand slam for the bigger program to cultivate a farm system. I don't know what it does for that other program. I don't know what would be in it for them, right? If you're that university, the only thing I can possibly think of, Davey, that could help them. And Hutton, you can speak on this, and because you went to one of these schools, right, that maybe could benefit in this way. Let's say, as an example, Tennessee and Middle Tennessee had a working relationship, Power 5 and Group of 5, that now Middle Tennessee is going to run Tennessee and Josh Heupel's offense. They're going to have a coach that's part of that tree. They're going to do everything within that system. So then the question would be, well, how does that benefit Middle Tennessee at all? If you're just developing players and the very best are going to move up and play for the big program in Tennessee. Hutton, the only thing I can think of is that if you talk about how you don't care for those major Power 5 programs to fund the athletic departments of other schools by paying them to come do it. It's not their job. I don't like that excuse. Not that they're directly paying those schools, but does that up the interest if Ohio State partners with Akron, let's say, or just go down the list? Suddenly, are you going to get Ohio State fans that are paying more attention and watching and attending or donating to Akron? Are you getting Tennessee fans that are into Middle Tennessee games more so because they know those players could be making the move up? Does that benefit them in any way? I don't know that it does, to where it benefits both sides.
Well, does it benefit? I mean, who gets Memphis?
That's Ole Miss. I don't know.
But I'm saying like the programs that are right there, right at the top of the Group of 5 that we're discussing. I mean, there are haves and have-nots in the power conferences. There are absolutely haves and have-nots in the Group of 5 in a massive way as well, in terms of funding and all of that. UNLV. I'm thinking of some other programs like South Florida.
I just don't know of any way that it's an interesting concept, but I try to look at it from a perspective of how does this benefit both sides? And I don't see where it benefits those Group of 5 programs to do something like that.
What I was going to add is we look at all these pay-for-play games anyway, that a lot of schools, it fits their athletic budget for the year whenever these top-tier Power 5 schools pay for them to come up and play them. And I figured you could probably find a way to siphon off some money to go towards their athletic department.
I mean, I like the concept.
And see, I hear all that and I think, then just don't play football. Right? Like now, if we're talking about these schools have to subsidize, and here's the other thing.
Right.
Is Wake Forest going to subsidize someone? I don't think so.
No.
So it doesn't work across the board, right? Because there's a mirror there. Chip Kelly pointed this out in a great rant about where college football needs to go. If you're looking at 64 and 64, you do have the opportunity to go 64 Power 5, 64 Group of 5, and they could partner and have a brother program that they go with. But is Kansas football going to subsidize Kent State?
Well, some of those Power 5 programs aren't able to do that. And again, for full transparency, I'm one of those guys that is going towards that. We pretty much just have 32 to 40 main programs, and that's where it looks like everything is heading.
Jump in.
Yeah.
That's going to continue unless there's some standard where they break off into clubs and not a program, and it's just you have the super conference that is ruled by a commissioner, and you have the rest of college football that's ruled by the NCAA. So then you have to play by two different sets of rules.
And we're getting into all the unintended consequences of all of this now because
it helps the player.
Well, I want to see guys have an opportunity to get scholarships too. And when all this started, I'm thinking, I see where this is headed.
Yeah.
And where it's headed is these programs just can't afford to have football anymore. It's going to literally be the haves and the have-nots, and some of the have-nots are not going to play the game because it's going to be too expensive for them. And we're right to say this, and it does happen, subsidizing some of these smaller programs already happening.
Yes.
There are states politically that demand the bigger school, the SEC school in the state or the Big Ten school, play public schools within the state that are FCS. If you're going to spend that money and give a program money, pay for the school to go right down the road to be in state and give them that money. So in a way, the big public institution is already subsidizing some of these programs. And if you go further down that path, business people are going to look at that and they start looking at the books and they say, well, why are we even doing this? What is the point of having some of these programs if all the money's funneling up either way?
And really, Chad, it's not even just the small schools. We had several conversations in multiple state assemblies whenever you were looking at Oklahoma, jumping to the SEC, like, well, what about Oklahoma State? Or whenever Washington and Oregon were jumping to the Big Ten, is there a way to where we can help out Oregon State and Washington State? Like those assemblies have been having those conversations because they don't want those other schools to get left behind, but there's nothing they can do about it.
Right. Yeah, and that's the issue is who gets left behind because the players that enter the portal aren't guaranteed a spot somewhere else necessarily. And I mean, you're already telling your coach that you're leaving. You're in the portal. The other thing too is just the sheer number of players for certain programs that leave versus others. There are right now, Conference USA, I believe, has 17 or 18 of the top players, the top ranked players in recruiting that have entered the portal a year or two later this upcoming portal track. So that conference is affected more than other conferences just based on the players they attract through high school recruiting and the coaches that they're hiring.
I don't remember this happening, but if you look at the NFL draft from this past season, every single round one player that was selected came from a Power 5 school. And you're used to seeing some of these other programs kind of sleep.
But you do have, even the quarterbacks have a group of 5 background. It's not unheard of, though.
Yeah, they're just moving up before they get to the NFL.
Right. They've been there. They're just ending in the Power 5.
It's a fun exercise and idea. We just all have to come to the conclusion that we're going to be playing different sports here. And the Power 5 and the top, not even just Power 5, top Power 5 teams are playing a different sport.
So when Lincoln Riley doesn't like Malachi Nelson, can Middle get him? Is that the rule?
Possibly. Send him back down.
Stay tuned. More coming.
San
here
Jose
on Hot
State
Mic.
would get them.
Oh, thank you.
What would you spend on an engagement ring?
I'm not an engagement ring type of person. But if she wanted a ring, I'd probably spend like 20 on it.
20 what?
1,000.
20,000. That's a lot of money.
Hey, and shit. You gonna get that lady a real answer? No, for real. Ain't it how much you make though?
Price, I didn't really care. Size, absolutely. Had to be big enough it could be seen, and I didn't want like a basic ring. I wanted like eclectic, like vintage looking. Okay. So we did a custom order to do my ring.
I didn't have a preference. I just had a gold preference, and he kind of took it from there.
And you trusted him. Did he crush it?
Oh yeah, he crushed it.
I've been spoiled thus far, and so I don't think I could ever go back from what I received last time.
Okay, so high standards. That's good. What are the standards?
Okay, it was 5 carats.
Okay.
And it was beautiful.
Mine was way too expensive.
What's way too expensive?
Like $45,000.
Okay. Wow. You probably went with a real diamond.
Very much so, yeah.
Do you think that that's kind of a flex for the guy? Like, is the engagement ring, is the engagement ring only for the girl, or do you get to watch other people look at your girl's ring?
Solely for the girl. Solely for the girl.
You don't get any enjoyment?
Couldn't care less.
Do we think gender roles are a thing of the past, or we should bring them back?
I feel like it depends on certain things, but I feel like now it's like a teammate. Like that should be your partner, your teammate. Like I'm not cleaning all the house all the time because I'm not your mom.
I agree. We're double income, no kids, so I really like a partnership, but I don't want to take the trash out. Yeah. So he's going to have to do that.
She takes the kids, I provide. Very traditional.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that more young people should do that?
Yes, very much so.
What is it about like a motherly quality that you like?
It's worked for thousands of years and it still works today.
I like being girly. I'm a girl and I like being girly, so I like traditional gender roles.
Okay, well, according to the 7 Hermetic principles, one of those being the law of gender, gender manifests on all levels, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all levels. Throughout the cosmos, there's gender. I don't know, it's a light. It's a book I read called The Supreme Way of Men or Women or something like that, and it spoke on how whether it's 2 women or 2 men, there still has to be someone who's masculine, someone who's feminine.
My friend, do you know what Riz means?
Yeah, Riz is it's like game. You know what game is? Like when you're trying.
I don't have any, but I know what it is.
It's like the new word for game. So meaning like you're able to speak well and get, a date kind of.
I do not.
Do you have any guess?
I could guess.
What do you think?
It's like, I don't know, razzle dazzle, I don't know.
Kind of. Actually, you're not too far off. Charisma.
Riz, charisma, I've been able to talk someone up.
Did you read that online, or did you already know what that meant?
I'm on TikTok way too much.
Okay, another word that has become very popular this year. Do you know what mentee B means?
I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not on social media. I don't know any of it.
What about mentee B? Do people use the word mentee B in real life?
What is that?
You don't know mentee B?
I've never heard of mentee.
A mental breakdown?
What?
Mentee B.
A mental breakdown.
Oh, you have a mentee B. I didn't know that. But I like that. I didn't know that, but I like that.
Mentee B, is that like the chocolate mint thing?
What does mentee B mean?
I have no idea. I don't know what that is. Mentee B, you ever heard?
You don't know mentee B?
I've never heard mentee B. Never in my life.
Shop.outkick.com is where you can head. Check out all the OutKick merch, the gear. Got the polos, T-shirts, and more. Hats, swag. Chad, we've got the polo.
Yeah,
OutKick.
I'll model the polo at some point. The problem is it's like 28 degrees here in Nashville this week.
Yeah.
For the most part, so probably going to wear a little bit more.
Got the pullover and more. Yeah.
But I'll
Some
model the
D-back
polo
shirts as well.
one day this week.
Yeah, you could head over to shop.outkick.com. Buy one, get one 50% off for a limited time.
It is important to DBAP.
Yes.
It's always important.
Yes. NFL injuries. Playoff push is on. For some teams, they're just trying to, just get to the offseason. Get to the vacations.
Get to the golf course.
Yes. There's a handful of those as well. The injuries of note, we've got Zach Wilson in concussion protocol. It's already been said that Robert Saleh said he's going to start if he's available. And but beyond that, the big one is Trevor Lawrence. What has happened to Jacksonville and their consistency? Losing to Baltimore, but the offense, it wasn't just a Trevor Lawrence injury. The offense was going nowhere against Baltimore's defense last night. But without Trevor Lawrence, Chad, they're going into the postseason based on what they've done, their record so far, their body of work. Houston, they're without C.J. Stroud. Who wants the AFC South? What about Indianapolis, who's sitting there at 8-6, that no one's talking about? Jacksonville's division to lose, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. They could do that.
Well, yeah, all three teams are 8-6 right now.
But think about where they were.
Oh, yeah.
And the role that they were on, and now Lawrence is hurt with the ankle.
Well, they got completely rolled by the AFC North is the problem here. In 3 straight games, losing to Cincinnati 34-31 in overtime, losing at Cleveland and Joe Flacco 31-27, then getting handled by Baltimore 23-7, and suddenly it's a 3-way tie atop the AFC South. It's crazy right now for a Jacksonville team that, you're right, Hutton, 4 weeks ago, a month ago, talk about, is this the best team in the AFC headed into the playoffs, right? And now the AFC South is just sort of more of a joke division. Not quite as bad as the NFC South, but first part of the year we're thinking, is this division underrated? And now it's just kind of what we thought going into the season, a pretty bad division. Trevor Lawrence's health is far and away the most important aspect of this team. And he has not been completely right since that ankle injury.
You've got, as well, just discussing some of the other big issues at quarterback. Let's see. Kyler Murray, undisclosed injury. He left the field in the third quarter. Let's see. Brock Purdy, he went through a concussion test. They'll just monitor his symptoms through the game. Will Levis with a bad ankle injury. We could see Ryan Tannehill back in for the Titans as they will host the Seattle Seahawks on Christmas Eve.
I thought Will Levis, it looked worse than it even was.
It looked really bad.
He got bent completely back, and I'm watching that thing happen, and when he didn't move at first, I'm thinking Joe Theismann. I'm thinking the worst possible scenario of what could have happened on the bottom of that pile. So thankfully for the Titans and for Levis, it's only an ankle sprain or an ankle injury similar to what Ryan Tannehill had a year ago. But that's the bummer about that is it's just lost evaluation time. Because the Titans, I think they know now this is the guy that the plan is to go forward with him. But still, It would have been nice to see him in these last 3 weeks. I don't know that we see that now.
Maybe not.
For the Titans and Will Levis.
Maybe not. Chad, we will see Carson Beck behind center for the Georgia Bulldogs. He has announced that he's returning.
Yeah, and I thought that was going to be the case because he announced just yesterday or the day before he will play in the Orange Bowl.
I'm thinking
if he's
no
doing
doubt
that,
that's a signal.
He's coming back next year also. So that's good news for Georgia. They don't have to worry about portal for quarterback or anything else. They got their guy back next year. And he's going to have a great chance to bolster his NFL draft ranking this next season at Georgia, where he's going to have a great supporting cast once again. So good news for the Georgia Bulldogs is they take a 1-year reprieve from winning the national title, and they jump right back in the mix to start next year.
Went from 1 to 5, and that's their reprieve. That would be their down year, like Saban would point to last year.
Hey,
a rebuilding year.
If Georgia lawmakers get their way, though, we talked about this on Friday, they're going to add that Orange Bowl game to the playoff. That's what they're lobbying for politically. Just go ahead and make Florida State, Georgia part of the playoff and make it happen that way.
So they would get rid of the Thursday night game from last week if Amazon would vote to get rid of the ratings. They're the lowest that they've had for Thursday night football. Thursday night football, according to Amazon, though, and they released the ratings, they're averaging almost 13 million viewers per week for Thursday night football on Amazon. The 42-point blowout, though, Taylor Swift wasn't in attendance. So who's going to stick around and watch for that glimpse?
Yeah.
What a massacre.
Tough. Taylor Swift dropping the F-bomb yesterday in slow motion, too, was terrific. If the Patriots-Chiefs game, one of my favorite moments of the day. Al Michaels said it best when it was, I think, 35-0 before the 42nd point was scored.
Drumming.
In his typical, what now has become way too typical, low-energy way, said, one silver lining with this, it's only a 45-minute flight home for me and for this team from Vegas. That summed up what everyone was thinking watching that performance by the Chargers.
And they've had
a team that completely quit on their head coach.
What was the Panthers matchup? Who did they play? Was it Panthers-Bears that week? That was also that was the lowest mark until this past week.
Yes, it was two teams battling for the number 1 overall pick.
There's Davey there.
But then the Panthers didn't even have the pick because they gave it to Chicago.
Yeah, either way, it's a win-win for Chicago. Even one of their picks was going to rise based on the result of that game. NFL Rapid Fire. Davey, give us your name a player, and we will discuss said quarterback, I believe.
That is true. Yeah, we've usually done teams, but there's just been so many storylines around all the quarterbacks. And so I've got some more notable names as of the last couple of weeks, either fighting for their job or just fighting to get their team into playoff contention. And we're going to start off with Joe Flacco.
Has anyone ever noticed how he looks a lot like Kevin Stefanski? I'm going to let that sit with you guys for
I will
a second.
notice it now every time.
And look at his face now with the beard and the beard he's got going, and think about Kevin Stefanski, and it's like they're morphing together, head coach and quarterback. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that he's been as effective as he has been. When I saw that, the Jets aren't going to go after him, I didn't think much of it because I thought he was cooked at this point in his career at, 38, 39 years old.
Yeah.
And he looks really good, and he's a guy that's got the Browns right there in playoff position.
I'm going to say
more than 2 or 3 sentences, but the Stefanski look-alike thing really threw me off.
Playoff quarterback
Yep.
is what I think of him. And it's consistency, it's an upgrade, and, I mean, looking around at the backup options across the league, some of the starting options, and knowing that you just have the vet who comes in and is able to pick up things and that you can just no question Stefanski went ahead and said he's the quarterback, no doubt about it. Had he not done that, there would be a mutiny in that Browns locker room. That's how good he's been in getting them and keeping them on the path to the postseason.
Guys, next up, Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Receiverless. He's got a tight end, but receiverless. He can throw passes, and they could be pinpoint accurate, 50-50 passes that are not being brought down, drops for big gains. He's frustrated, but he's still helping. He's helping Kansas City go on the road in New England and win games. It's just not the same Patrick Mahomes because the receivers, they're dropping a lot of passes in KC, or home or on the road for that matter.
I think after the blow up against Buffalo, I'll sum it up this way. A guy who's come to grips that they don't have the offense they've had in years past, and they've got to get creative in how they find ways to win and affect the game positively on offense. I think he has reserved himself to this season being the weaker of the two groups on the team, knowing that they have a better defense than offense, and he's going to be fine now being a game manager when he needs to, punting when he needs to, and doing what's right for that team to win. Because ultimately, that's all Patrick Mahomes cares about, winning. That's what he is. That's what he does.
He's been doing that, but you're right. He can't trust a receiver.
No, I think he's reserved himself now to know they're not good on offense. They just can't get them beat. And I think that's hard for him to come to grips with, but I think he's finally done it.
Another guy coming off a win against a really good team, Bills' Josh Allen.
I still need to see more. I think it was the perfect cocktail of everything going on in a good way. And you got a lot of good feelings coming off that blowout over the Cowboys, but the Cowboys were pathetic once again on the road. Dak Prescott was not good. Josh Allen did not have to do much. Hutton, it's still kind of prove it season for me with Josh Allen now the rest of the way.
He is the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. When he protects the football, he can turn the football over. He just can't do it 3 and 4 times in a game. And that's why I don't trust the Bills every single week in a 4-game stretch. But it's why Buffalo is going to be a terror in the postseason. He's got help, but he doesn't have his main guy. Diggs is upset with his production. Look, I just say it's good and bad. And right now, they are on a streak of a lot of good. It's right where they have to be. And in the clutch moments where they can't afford to lose a game, Allen's stepping up, so is the defense, so are players around him. They're winning football games. Good for them.
They've really turned it around since the issue came out with McDermott's comments from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because no one cared from a couple of years ago because they were winning. And then someone brought it up and leaked it when they were, 500 going to Kansas City. Yeah. And it has been brought up again because guess what? They're winning again, Jack.
It's crazy how that always works.
Well, the fans are mad that it was brought up in the first place because now they're winning again.
But congrats, we all clicked on it.
All right, guys. Brock Purdy.
MVP. I'll leave it there. That's simple. He's the MVP of the National Football League right now.
Wheeler and dealer in an offense that is full of quality A-grade talent. And he's one of them. He's A-grade. He's not elite. He's not that A-plus wagyu. But, man, is he undervalued of the perception of the final pick in the draft, making $800,000.
Right now, the Colts would be in the playoffs if they started today. Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minshew, and I do not want to disrespect Gardner Minshew when I say this because I think his story is great, and I love his moxie and all those things. Gardner Minshew's success is a symptom of just how bad the National Football League is this year. That is what he is. If you wanted me to point to the poster child of the mediocrity of this league this season, it is Gardner Minshew's success with the Colts. That is what he represents to me.
He's a serviceable and really good backup option. Really good. He's just a very average starter week to week, and that doesn't win you games. But they're winning games.
They're 8-6.
Chad's right because of, everyone's about 8-6 or with 7 or 8 wins. That's right where the NFL wants it to be. He's a product of the teams and how bad some of these teams have been, even though the NFL wants you to know that all these teams are still playoff eligible.
If this was a normal and good NFL season, they would have probably 3 less wins right now and be completely irrelevant this time of year. But because the NFL is so bad this year, Gardner Minshew is better than a serviceable starting quarterback in the NFL. Not a knock at Gardner Minshew, a knock at where we are right now in the league.
Every AFC wildcard team that would be in the playoffs right now is currently on their backup. So you got the Browns with Flacco. Really, he wasn't even their backup. They had to go get him off the street. The Bengals with Jake Browning, and then Gardner Minshew, as we just discussed.
Terrible.
And then, guys, moving right along.
His top receiver, Minshew, by the way, Pittman's in concussion protocol. That's his go-to guy.
Guys, Dak Prescott coming off a terrible performance in Buffalo.
Up and down, good, not great. And in this regard, home or away, give me home Dak Prescott. I punt and start someone else in fantasy football if he's starting on the road.
I fear that was a glimpse of what we'll see and how their season ends in the playoffs in Buffalo. That's what I think about the Cowboys.
They better
very talented
get home
roster, top to bottom, maybe the most talented roster in the league. And it feels like they're going to have to go on the road, and they're going to look like that in a game on the road in the playoffs. And that's how it'll all end.
The top headlines include, well, the two teams that remain in the Pac-12 or Pac-2, however you look at it. And, well, there's an NFL vet that's not going to be playing for his current team much longer.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, final hour here for the Monday edition. Hot Mic with Putney Withrow here on the OutKick Network. 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Coming up in 20 minutes, Bobby Carpenter will join us. Always a great football discussion there. Chad, Rashard Mendenhall has certainly stirred up the discussion with his post on X.
His X post.
His X post, yes. Former Steelers running back. Rashard Mendenhall posted, I'm sick of average white guys commenting on football. Y'all not even good at football. Can we please replace the Pro Bowl with an all-black versus all-white bowl so these guys can stop trying to teach me who's good at football? I'm better than your GOAT. That from Rashard Mendenhall earlier this morning.
Let's, if we can, guys, let's leave that post on X up on the screen a little bit.
Break this down
because I kind of want to dissect this thing piece by piece. First off, congrats, Rashard. This, my friend, is a take. This is a hot take. I do love the attempt being made here, and it is very spicy, and I love it for that reason. I'm sick of average white guys commenting on football. Average people at something comment on things all the time. I need to know who specifically he's calling out here, because this is what we'd call back in the day a sub-tweet. But now that Twitter doesn't exist, I guess it's a sub-post.
Yes.
He's clearly sub-posting someone because they said something about, I'm guessing, a black player in the NFL. He took offense to it, and he's talking about now I'm sick of average white guys commenting on football.
I'm trying to tie this in.
Yeah.
Is this about Peter King and what he said about Mike Tomlin? Mendenhall played for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
And Tomlin's record speaks for itself, which we open the show with.
I don't.
Can he pick it? White.
It could be. It could be. I think, though, he's talking about a guy who played in the league.
Okay.
That's an average player to below, probably. I'm sick of average white guys. Average white guys, average white players, or just average white guys?
I think it's, the Pro Bowl would be the players.
What is the Nate Bargatze stand-up, the world's greatest average American? I think it was named one of his stand-ups. So it's just any average white guy can't comment?
Here's also why you said you love this is really the take, authentic. It's also true. I mean, Pro Bowl would be a massacre worse than 70-20 that we saw Miami put on.
I think
earlier this year.
To Rashard's hypothetical scenario here, I'm pretty sure the all-white team would have a hard time covering some guys on the perimeter with corner play.
I mean,
I don't think that would be advantageous at all.
Does Jason Sehorn get to come back and put pads on?
I don't think Jason Sehorn's ain't walking through that door anytime soon, Hutton. So the white cornerback play in the league could be an issue for that team. So, yeah, he's not wrong. Y'all not even good at football, going piece by piece. Can we please replace the Pro Bowl with an all-black versus all-white bowl? Because that's exactly what this country needs right now. Let's just divide the races even more. All-black, all-white, that's what America wants to see in the Pro Bowl. Rashard Mendenhall, not a unifying force, a dividing force is what I'm seeing here.
A draft of this would be amazing.
So these cats can stop trying to teach me who's good at football. I'm better than your GOAT. Now, I really need to get to the bottom of this last part of it. Who is he? He's better than the GOAT white running back, which right now is Christian McCaffrey, which I hate to break it to you, Rashard. You were never better than Christian McCaffrey on his worst day. Are we going back to like John Riggins? Who are you saying? Larry Zonka, like the GOAT white running back of all time? Or are you talking about
Mike
Tom
Allstott?
Brady? The GOAT, Mike Allstott? I mean, go down the list. I don't know who exactly he's talking about with the GOAT comment there.
Same.
Look, I love a good hot take, and this is the hottest of takes right here from Rashard Mendenhall. Hutton, you brought up, you said something about a draft.
Yes.
If we could draft, I would love to do something like that to see what these teams would look like. Now, he's not wrong that if you divided it up by race, if I'm betting and putting all my money on a team,
no one's keeping up with Tyreek Hill.
I'm taking the black team because the white team has no defensive backs. So that's going to be an advantage for the all black team in this scenario. But imagine flipping that around. If someone said that, if J.J. Watt posted, I'm tired of average black players saying this. Let's divide them up and go all white versus all black.
It would be a kicking competition.
Yeah, the guy would be banned from X. He'd probably go to some, social media outpost that I don't even know that exists.
I don't think Elon
now,
Musk is
if that
banning
happens.
anyone, though. That's the good thing.
Yeah. Well, YouTube would definitely ban him if he said it there. Maybe not. Maybe not Elon.
Probably
Who
not.
knows? Yeah. Self
Probably
sabotage
not.
could be from CBS or
Yes.
whoever reported it.
Correct.
It's a hot take. Look, I'm not going to get too mad over a hot take. This is the hottest of takes from Rashard Mendenhall.
More likely to happen, this Pro Bowl or Clay's high school team taking on the WNBA team?
Say that one more time. Sorry, I was reading.
More likely this Pro Bowl matchup or Clay's high school team taking on the WNBA team.
I would watch either. I'd pay good money to watch either.
$34.95, which is what the IRS charged Clay.
I'd say that the desire for money in this would win out, and that Clay's has a better chance of actually happening. I don't think the league is going to go for this. The league, who by the way just went to a flag football game,
right? This will be a flag game
for their Pro Bowl, is now going to say, Rashard's onto something. I think the ratings dipped a little bit this last year, so we're going to up the ratings for it and go all black versus all white in our Pro Bowl. I don't see the league making that decision.
I'm better than your GOAT.
That's the one I don't understand. Is he talking about analyst? I'm better than the average white guy analyst?
I guess
or I'm better than
because it goes back to white guys commenting on football.
Yeah, are you better than Tom Brady? Were you more important than Tom Brady as a player? I'm confused by what his argument is there at the end. We need to try to get Rashard Mendenhall on this show. That's what I'd love to do. I'd love to draft against Rashard Mendenhall. He drafts, we draft, and we see what the rosters look like in the end. I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm probably going to take Rashard Mendenhall's roster.
What's the spread
at the end of that
What's the
draft?
Spread in
but
Vegas?
I'd like to do it either way.
Minus what?
Oh, minus 11.
Oh, minus 11 points. That's it.
You think it'd be higher than that?
Oh yeah.
Without defensive backs?
Yes.
Yeah, probably so. What's the biggest line in the NFL this year? 14?
Not even defensive backs.
15?
No, the largest spread when it closed was Miami and Tennessee on Monday night.
It was 14 and a half, I think, or 15.
No, it was 13 and a half, I think. So they covered.
It's probably going to be a little bit more than that. Maybe minus 17. Rashard's team versus the all-white team, minus 17.
I think it's much more than that, Chad. I really do.
Wow.
Yes.
I know the highest spread covered by a team this year, 17.5, and that's the Giants versus the Cowboys. But the game you were referencing was
underdog.
the biggest win. Against the
underdog.
spread.
Yeah,
was the biggest underdog win.
We would be. Yeah, I'm saying our team here, if we drafted this with Mendenhall, this would set records. If we covered. If our team covered the spread, that would be a headline.
Let's get Rashard Mendenhall on the show because I just really want to ask him to clarify that last part. I'm better than your GOAT. Who is the GOAT you're referencing? You think you'd have a good answer to that? Or he's just thinking, I just got to look
This is geared more about the average guy commenting. So I think he's closing with the same mindset. So I'm assuming that is he talking about Schefter? I mean, who's he talking about?
That's what I don't understand. Like, there's differences
between. That's why I think this could be the Peter King report.
But yeah, like if you're better than the GOAT of guys who didn't play football that cover the NFL, yeah, okay, absolutely you are. You played 11 years in the NFL, or
I'm gonna look up his account.
Are you better than the best white former player that's an analyst? Peyton and Eli Manning, no. Matt Ryan, no. J.J. Watt, no. You talking about Adam Archuleta? Okay, maybe.
No, I'm not. Maybe he's right. No, none of those guys are sending this. None of these guys are posting this.
I
you see what I'm saying?
I think the Manning cast should fire back and say, let's draft. Let's make this because they're the coaches, right? A year ago, they coached each Pro Bowl
You're
team.
right. You're right. It would be McAfee now.
I don't think the Disney Corporation wants any part of that, quite frankly. But
I think it would be McAfee now.
Is McAfee the go? Oh, is he saying he's better than McAfee?
I don't know. I'm saying that could be the coach.
Davey, have we reached out to Rashard Mendenhall as a show?
Before this, or no, not yet. We will though.
We're gonna.
Chad put this request in. This is the verbal request.
This is my verbal request.
It is in writing as well.
Let's
to the show.
Reach out to him so at least we can come on this show and say that we reached out and have not heard back if he doesn't respond.
I mean, I think he may come on. Do the draft. He should do the draft now.
I think he
should bring it up.
I think we ask him and say, look, two average white guys here, just reaching out, friend to friend, man to man, American to American.
Acknowledging
Please hop on our show. Yep. We acknowledge that you are better than our GOAT if our GOAT is one of us because you're better at football than us. We'd love to ask you about the last part of your post. saying that you're better than your GOAT.
And just looking at his account, it is, I believe, about Tomlin in this report. 6:11 this morning. I don't understand how you can talk about Tomlin's playoff record without acknowledging that Kenny Pickett has only played 1 year. Who was the quarterback for all those playoff losses? Literally all the losses. Make up your minds how you arbitrarily separate Mike and Ben in the win-loss column.
So maybe he's talking about Roethlisberger,
the GOAT of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, saying that he's the fans' GOAT in their mind.
Again.
Maybe it's a shot at his former teammate. And also, by the way, Peter King did not mention his playoff record at all in his column.
Right.
He just mentioned that the seat is getting toastier
But
by the day.
that if you're trying to make the argument, that's the one being thrown out. Is when's the last time they won a playoff game? The first response to Mendenhall's tweet, this first one, the post, comes from an account titled, Obviously Tomlin. And the response is, I don't understand how you fumbled in Super Bowl 45.
It could be Terry Bradshaw. Bradshaw went on record earlier talking about they need to make some big adjustments this offseason.
But he also said that he backs Pickett, right?
Bradshaw did.
Yes. Which means he's not taking the side of it's not coaching, it's the player.
Well,
he's saying it's the
we
player,
need to go
not
to
the
the
coach.
source and ask Rashard
If Aaron Rodgers were
this.
associated with this organization, he would have put a stop to this. This would be done.
He would be
calling
on
out Bradshaw.
McAfee ASAP, calling this type of activity out.
Our former players need to shut up.
Yeah,
and they would.
Shut the hell up.
Issue apologies now.
Right. I will have your X account deleted.
How dare you talk about Zach Wilson?
If you don't shut up. And all this race baiting. We're going to stop it right now. And the leaks. We're going to cut all that out too. Allie in the YouTube chat says, it's a dumb tweet, no doubt. But it'd be kind of bizarre if there were thousands of black people with legitimate platforms who were constantly playing armchair GM to NASCAR or something like that. 44% of the NFL is white. This is not like a NASCAR percentage of in the sport. So it's pretty close to 50-50 of the league is black and white.
What's the percentage of wide receiver, corner?
I don't think it's crazy that white people would have an opinion on white people with a platform can also have an opinion on the NFL.
We have, let's see, T.J. Watt on defense and an offensive line. And
we dominate tight end.
Tight end.
Tight end. Quarterback would be solid. I mean,
but
go down the list.
That's 50-50, though. Like
Christian McCaffrey.
Yes.
If you're mixed, where do you fall in line?
Is there a...
What was Christian McCaffrey in Carolina?
The best response was Christian McCaffrey.
Hurt.
Yes.
And
who's the backup?
Yeah.
Is Danny Woodhead still in the league? If you're going to your second, first off, not any running backs playing every snap, but if your second option is me asking, is Danny Woodhead still in the league? You're probably at a deficiency at that position also.
Man, well,
Can we move Braxton Berrios?
The pressure on McCaffrey to just ball out in this game is amazing.
Christian, you're going to need to do everything in this one.
He's trending more than he ever has before, and it's not because Brock Purdy said he should be the MVP. It's because, he's our running back.
Yeah. Cooper Kupp, we're going to need you big time in this game.
Yeah, Davey's
Cooper Kupp, a lot tight end heavy.
Let's see.
Offensive line would be fine.
Be okay, yeah.
Edge rusher would be good. I think you could find
Max Crosby, T.J. Watt.
Yeah, defensive interior guys. Okay,
sure.
It's
our top tackle would be blocking Myles Garrett. I don't feel great about that.
It's linebacker to back end of the defense that becomes a real issue.
Can I have Harrison Smith from 4 years ago?
You're going to need Harrison Smith from 4 years ago. You're going to need John Lynch to come down from the owner's box to the field to play safety.
I'm here to say right now, right in the league right now, NFL offenses are not scoring a lot of points. You separate it like this. This is a massacre. You would have seen defenses are already winning the battle for some reason, and the rules are stacked against them. Corners it's the toughest position to play right now. They're already having success against passing offenses.
You would have to.
We don't even have a corner.
You'd have to get real creative to find out how this all-white team is going to defend Tyreek Hill. Some bracket coverage, but who's going to be in coverage?
Chad, the Caucasian defensive back on this roster.
Do you just play such a cushion that you're giving up 8-9 yards a pop and just seeing if they can 8-9 yard it down the field the entire time and come up and make the tackle in hopes that they turn it over before they get in the end zone?
We'll just have to
Is that the game plan?
that Ryan Gosling's our corner, and we just have to make up for it however we can.
Yeah.
Like Coach Boone did, and remember the Titans.
Allen, Ryan Gosling's character. I'm good for such and such team, but I can't play against these guys. I can't run with them.
What we do bring is Taylor Swift to the game.
Yes, we
because
do.
Kelsey will be playing, both of them, for that matter.
Does that swing the line from -17 to -15? Taylor Swift's presence?
No. Again, I think you're going way below what it should be. I think it's more like -29 and a half.
I mean, look, everything but secondary and I think linebacker it would be okay.
And that's why it's -29 and a half.
Yeah,
the problem,
and that's where it gets tough.
Well, the other thing we haven't thought about, if it turns into a kicking battle, the Whites would have the advantage there.
Well, yes, but
it's not going to turn into a kicking battle.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, with no secondary, it's not going to turn into a kicking battle.
This is like
That's the issue.
The punt god, Matariza, going to Buffalo for a team that doesn't punt.
Yeah.
Literally what they had like 2 or 3 games the previous season where they punted 1 or 2 times.
I think it also kind of puts the white team at an even bigger disadvantage that knowing the black team would just go for 2 every time. Right?
Yes.
Like that's going to up the points quicker. Because you're going to be more compelled to
hang on.
to kick the extra point.
Who's the safety, the defensive back in Houston?
Well, there's the Houston
kicks?
player that kicked, yeah.
There you go. We're screwed.
Made a field goal.
Yeah, a long one.
Yeah.
There you go. It's bad.
Black team 1, white team 0. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Rashard Mendenhall, hot take.
We
got
have the
us
draft.
talking. We appreciate
and
it.
Dave Chappelle gets to announce the picks at
That's
the podium. He's commissioner.
And Bill Burr, who was a great part of that sketch.
Bobby Carpenter.
Miss you, Chappelle.
Joins us next.
Miss you.
On Hot Mic.
So in 2019, Sean McDermott, talking to his team in training camp, gave a really stupid analogy. I mean, really stupid. He was talking about 9/11. He was talking about how well coordinated the attackers on our country were. And he was trying to make a reference about communication. He was trying to make a reference that these folks communicated well to one another. It's totally idiotic. I mean, I don't give a damn whether they communicated well. I don't give a damn whether or not they synchronized. I don't care. They were criminals, terrorists, at that got the absolute, well, they're the absolute worst of the worst. And I get a little fired up and I stumble over my words. I actually had stuff written down for this, but here's the thing. You got to understand when you're speaking in public, I don't give a damn if you're trying to make a cute analogy. You never used Hitler. You never use 9/11 terrorists. They are the worst of the worst, period. There's nothing good about them. I don't care. You know, how many times have we heard people talk about Hitler and say, yeah, but no, there's no yeah, but. When you do what these folks did to people and families, our country, other countries, you simply never praise them ever. You're not being clever. You're not being smart. You're not making a great analogy. You're being an insensitive clown. And I never use the word insensitive. I don't. I honestly don't. Insensitive to me is meaningless. Let me change that. You're being just a moron. Don't do it. It's not smart. It's not clever. It's not, well, look at No. Horrible human beings. You never reference John Wayne Gacy or Dahmer or Manson. Never. In no way, shape, or form. Now, having said that, hey, how about we get over ourselves? How about we get over what happened 5 years ago, 4 years ago? And here's the deal in sports, and I've told you this before, okay? There's always the list. And when things go bad, here comes the list. So all of a sudden now, the Buffalo Bills are struggling. All of a sudden now, Sean McDermott's leadership is being called into question. And all of a sudden now, something that McDermott has apologized for, both in front of the team and to his bosses, 4 or 5 years later is being brought out. Now, that's ridiculous. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do stupid things. At least that's what the preacher tells me on Sundays. At least that's what when somebody in church, Traders Point Christian Church, says, hey, look, if you've sinned, raise your hand. And everybody raises their hand and the preacher says, yeah, I did too. We're all sinners. and we all demand forgiveness, except when it comes time to actually forgive and forget. We never do that. We just can't. We won't. We're so full of crap. We just are. And you can act and say like we aren't, but we are. Who here hasn't sinned? Cast the first stone and all that stuff. Oh, yeah, we're all sinners, boy, when somebody does, particularly in sports, particularly when they're losing. We can't wait to jump on them.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. You can catch all the OutKick gear over at shop.outkick.com. 50% off. Buy one, get one, 50% off. You've got the shirts, hats, polos, and more. Shop.outkick.com. Buy one, get one, 50% off for a limited time. Chad, we were discussing the spread in Vegas for Rashard Mendenhall's proposal of all black versus all white in the Pro Bowl, and what the game would turn out to be. I'm going much higher than you. I said, I've honestly, it could be more than this. Minus 29.5 is what I said. You say 17?
I'm thinking about it. I'm getting tons of messages on this too. People love the topic. Everyone agrees with us that the white team would lose badly.
Yes.
I'm going 45-21 is my predicted final score.
Okay.
So I'm saying minus 24.
Okay.
Is what I've settled on for that game.
Bobby Carpenter joins us. Bobby, I don't know if you've seen Rashard Mendenhall's tweet or not yet, but which line do you prefer and how we've set this?
So Rashard Mendenhall, by the way, just to fill you in, said that he's tired. Okay, he's tired of hearing from average white guys on football, and said, "I'm better than your GOAT." We don't quite understand what he means by that in regards to your GOAT. I think he's mad at some criticism of Mike Tomlin and pointed some different things, but he said, let's make the Pro Bowl all white versus all black, and we would destroy the all white team, was his take. And Hutton and I could not disagree with that. So we're trying to settle on a Vegas line for what that game would look like.
You know ours. What's yours?
Oh, goodness. I would probably say somewhere in that area between 13.5, 17.5.
Oh, wow. That's what Chad went with immediately.
Less than 3 touchdowns, but probably somewhere between 2 and 3, maybe 14.5 to 17.5, maybe 20. It's one of those significant numbers right there.
Man,
first of all,
no corners would hurt.
The question is, the Pro Bowl, you'd have to play some safety. It'd be a lot of cover 2 action.
This must be flagged.
A lot of cover 2. Yep.
Well, here's the issue with it. Like, you talk about Pro Bowl, are they playing like normal Pro Bowl right now, or is this actually going to be a real game where they actually try?
That's a good question.
They would actually try in this.
I think what Rashard's saying is there'd be some effort in this game, is what he's claiming. It'd be better for television ratings.
Gosh, I mean, what's great about that is I thought we were supposed to be pushing forward and pushing passes, and average white guys talking about him. I'm not sure. Is he talking about players?
I just get the sense this is more geared towards his reaction to the idea that Mike Tomlin is somehow on the hot seat, which is also ridiculous.
I also think Ben Roethlisberger has been very he's gone after on his podcast Tomlin and the Steelers. I think this is all about Ben Roethlisberger.
And Bradshaw also sided with Pickett recently.
He's calling Roethlisberger an average white guy. I think this is what it stems from. I think there's some bad blood between those two as teammates back in the day.
There might be.
That's my guess.
And I don't know if Ben was maybe the most beloved guy throughout the entirety of his career in Pittsburgh. The irony is we talk about Mike Tomlin receiving heat. I don't think anybody doesn't believe that Mike Tomlin's a really good head coach. They've never been bad. They've had average to below average rosters, and they've never been bad. They've always been good. I mean, I don't think he's ever had a losing season. The irony is now that we're talking about the reason why people are upset about him is his loyalty, which I think is a great trait, but also can be a flaw, his loyalty to his white offensive coordinator in Matt Canada, and that's the reason they were struggling. And his resistance to fire him, and possibly that coming from the top, and whether the ownership, management, whatever it is. And so I wish. Listen, if Rashard Mendenhall has a problem with Ben Roethlisberger, just put his name on it, dude. You guys played together.
Yeah.
I don't know why he would be hiding around some average white guy. If you're going to say that, be like, hey, there's a guy that a lot of people think's really good. I think he's an average white dude playing quarterback, and just throw that out there.
I said, is he talking about Mike Allstott? Who's the
I'm
Christian
with you,
McCaffrey?
Bobby. To
Come
me,
on.
that's a smarter post.
That's it.
And more of an interesting discussion to have than let's just divide everybody up, play a game. He really took it to the next level with his complaint about someone talking about Mike Tomlin.
Mike Tomlin stuck by Ben a lot. I mean, he was talking about the culture and different things like that. And listening to Ben's stuff, I think it's more of a criticism of Pickett than it probably is Mike Tomlin. And in all due respect, I don't think Kenny Pickett is the be-all, end-all, and I don't think he's probably the answer in Pittsburgh. I think part of the problem is their offense, and maybe part of the problem is Kenny Pickett as well. But I don't know anybody that's really criticized Mike Tomlin for in-game decisions, what he's done. I mean, he's had the respect of a lot of people in the NFL for a long time.
And they don't have the fundamentals, and there's some flaws with this roster over the last couple of weeks. I'm assuming you saw the George Pickens effort on that block, or the lack thereof.
Yes.
Is in the league when you were playing, is there locker room justice to this? Do players step up and call someone out for that effort? What's just the behind the scenes penalty? How is it handled beyond just, we don't want him here anymore?
Well, especially when you look at the Ayuk effort that he gave in the San Francisco game.
Yes.
I think the difference between a team that's trending upward, that realizes, hey, we've got a future here, we could win a Super Bowl, and a team that might be underperforming. And then let's be realistic. George Pickens, I don't know if anybody's ever put him on the all high-end character team. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but he's a guy with immense talent, and you wonder, has he always gotten the most out of it? And so on a team that is ascending, you see high effort. On a team that's struggling and probably, sliding out of the playoffs, you see it kind of go that way. To me, there's guys in that locker room. And the problem is most of them are on the defensive side, where they'll say something about that because they work too hard to be able, Cam Hayward, I know Cam over his time at Ohio State. He's been there 12, 13 years, all pro seemingly every year. Dude is a boss and is a leader. And Cam is a very imposing and intimidating figure. And it's tough to go across the ball and do that. But when you're in a situation where Pittsburgh is, where you see your season sliding away, it wouldn't surprise me if he grabbed hey, we do special teams stuff together as a team on Monday after the game. But then you also might put some special plays, good or bad, from offense or defense. It wouldn't surprise me if Tomlin puts that in there. Cam, this isn't going to be us, guys. So, and it depends on how chronic it's been. But if that's a one-off, you've been warned. Now it's it. The next time, there's going to be words that are going to be had. And that's when you see locker room fights and stuff where guys start getting physical, because there's dudes that put all of it in because there's real pros. And then there's guys that go out and just play football, and they pretend like they're still playing Pop Warner, and they've always been better than everybody.
Yeah.
So they think they can kind of get away with stuff. And that's where you begin to see that friction in the locker room. And I'm not saying it's gotten there in Pittsburgh or ever, but I guarantee you, on a team with Mike Tomlin as the head coach and Cam Hayward, people like that in the locker room, that stuff's getting addressed.
What does the future of the Ohio State quarterback position look like, Bobby?
Right now I think you're going to see Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, and Aaron Nolan probably moving forward into 2024. I mean, do they possibly add somebody? At this point, I don't see it happening in this portal round. Maybe someone after the spring if it doesn't look good in spring ball. But I think, if you don't get one of the top 2 or 3 guys, and let's be honest, those guys are also very expensive, and there's a finite amount of dollars that you can only spend on your team. I mean, you can always try to keep shaking the money tree, but eventually there is a cap on that, as George is seeing right now with maybe some of their players, that we want more. This guy's getting this. I want that too. And you just can't pay everybody. But maybe they do something in the spring. I think they're going to roll with those 3 guys. and try to develop them and see ultimately where it goes. And I think that there's a lot of talent there. They're inexperienced. You have a first-year starter again, which is less than ideal. But if you bring in a guy, you're probably bringing a one-year dude because you want to make sure your young guys feel like there's a pathway to play. And if you go get someone outside of that, like you're disrupting the balance where you bring in a guy in every year, like every 2 years or so, there's going to be a competition. One guy wins, the other guy in college football, let's be honest, most likely transfers now. But that's kind of, I think the methodology that Ryan's looking at. And I'd rather roll with guys who I know, who I recruited, and I can develop maybe than bringing in someone else, unless it's one of those top, like 1, 2, or 3 guys.
Bobby Carpenter with us. Check him out on SiriusXM channel 84. Plus, you've got him on social at bcarp3. I'm not trying to knock the guy or the program here, but McCord, what's been the reaction to him choosing Syracuse? And the perception of when you knew he wasn't going to be the Ohio State quarterback, the perception of the program that you thought he would land with.
I looked around in the portal and, talking to some people that track it, like he's probably, you've got obviously, Dylan Gabriel in there. Oh goodness, there's a,
there's a number of them. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's you look at a couple
Riley
guys.
Leonard.
Okay, Riley Leonard, there's probably 2 or 3 guys you say these guys are better, but you thought he kind of fell in that second tier, maybe not 4, 5, or 6, maybe.
Because where he's playing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he took Ohio State to, they were 11-1. He was good, maybe not elite.
Mm-hmm.
He was battling an ankle injury, had some nicked up a little bit this year, but he made some really good plays. There was still some meat on the bone, but you think it's his first year as a starter. I think it was pretty much hemmed up for him to go to Nebraska. And I don't necessarily think it was the Raiola situation that derailed that. Possibly from, the visit, something went awry there. And I don't know potentially what that was or how that looked. But I think Nebraska would have been probably pretty good. They probably would have compensated him fairly well. Going to Syracuse, I don't really see that as an upgrade at all. And I don't think Ryan was planning on benching him at Ohio State. It was like, hey, but we're going to evaluate stuff. And I can't promise anything in December for September.
Yeah.
So he's going to Syracuse now, and it's like more money, maybe. I don't know if you're going to have as much talent around you. And
I would believe the money thing, except there was a big story about Boeheim and the big booster not being allowed to sit courtside. Remember that?
Yes.
Again, like I'm just thinking, I don't get the sense it was NIL. Maybe I'm crazy, but it was. I just didn't feel like that was something that anyone expected.
I was kind of shocked. Nebraska sounded about right, and it seemed like he was greased to go there, and it was all going to be good. And then now, something goes awry, and he ends up at Syracuse. And guys, man, I don't think that that's a great setup. I mean, over the last 25 years, really since Donovan McNabb, I mean, have they really had a program that you could look at that was in the mix on a year in and year out basis?
And what happened in Nebraska was Dylan Raiola. And as of about 3 minutes ago, it's official. He has flipped his commitment from Georgia to Nebraska. Bobby, this becomes the highest rated recruit ever to go to Nebraska since they started following recruiting and rankings in 2006. Now, they had some pretty good players, Heisman Trophy winners in the past. So I'm not saying he's the best ever, but from a recruiting standpoint, the highest ranked recruit, number 1 or number 2 quarterback nationally, depending on what service you follow. What does this say about Matt Rule and also now upping the expectation for Nebraska football, knowing you've got one of the premier quarterback talents in America on your roster?
I think this was kind of one of the things that ultimately led to Scott Frost's demise. I mean, outside of the fact that they were losing close games on the field and things like that were happening, you had a guy who played at Nebraska, who played with Dylan's father, Dom, at Nebraska. You think, hey, man, it's your center, quarterback. Like, what could be better to get a great player who's a legacy there, who's the coach played with his dad, and then he commits to Ohio State, ultimately then commits to Georgia. But getting back to Nebraska, I think it's huge because this is someone that they thought they had a chance at getting. You're probably not getting this kid unless he's a legacy, but you ultimately land him there. And what that can do is he can ultimately help bolster that recruiting class, bringing in other receivers, offensive line. People want to play with other talented guys, and they want to be in a situation where you think you can win. Matt Rule, I believe, is a very good coach. I think he'll get the most out of him. And now it's going to be up to them to see if they can keep building this class and the next one to help supplement, his talents and what he can do.
Final minute here, Bobby. How many teams do you truly believe in right now in the NFL with 3 games left?
Ooh, Baltimore, there's so many injuries. I'll start this. San Francisco 1. I think Miami 2.
Interesting. Okay.
Kansas City, as long as they're not shooting themselves in the foot, I'll throw them in there. I think Philly can be in that mix. You know, if they can kind of correct the ship. Like if Dallas had home field, I would probably believe in them.
Agreed.
But they struggle on the road. Honestly, like a team that's playing as well as anyone now is Buffalo, but they've got to win out.
Yeah.
You know, to get there. Like Baltimore's good. They just lost their running back. Like there's just injury after
It's
injury,
wide open.
guys. So I would say this will be a very entertaining last 4 weeks in the playoffs as well.
And Philly's changing their play caller on defense in week 16.
Yeah.
Nuts. Matt Patricia's the new play caller there. Bobby Carpenter, he knows football, joins us weekly. Bobby, thanks so much, man. And I know you rescheduled some things for us today, so I appreciate that as well.
Hey, man, we got class parties, everything going on, kids stuff. So I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for helping.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Right.
Thank you, Bobby.
Bobby Carpenter, BCarp3 on social.
I know all
Great
about
dude.
those holiday parties with kids programs and all that stuff.
How many have you been to?
2 different Christmas programs now as of Sunday, and kids have had at least 3 different Christmas parties.
How many more?
School or
come?
other organization. I think we're in the clear now. We've entered the final week, so I think we're all set on that. I got a stat for you on the top 10 players nationally in recruiting.
Okay.
And where they're going when we come back that I think is a perfect illustration. This is from Dan Wetzel on the impact of NIL that we'll talk about.
And the impact of how many teams are truly based on the run game in the NFL. And there's a vet who's probably playing his final games for a team that goes all in the backfield. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. that was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth of the Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Head and Withrow across the OutKick network. If you're watching on YouTube, we say thank you. A reminder, we go live January 3rd on outkick.com/watch. Click the watch tab or type in outkick.com/watch. You'll be able to watch all the shows live. Still be able to watch on YouTube on demand, but the full show live.
Yeah, they're going to look into a way to have
outkick.com.
some sort of interaction because people are constantly bitching at me on the YouTube chat about that
Well, and
not
hey,
having the chance to interact with the show. So we'll
and
come up. We'll
rightfully
come up with a way.
so, by the way. We want that too.
Yeah, we'll come up with a way to interact with our viewership, one way or another. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure that out. And if you're on YouTube
Right.
and that's your only way to watch shows, we will have like a 45-minute version of the show at the conclusion of the show every day that you can watch as kind of a recap.
Okay.
I'm just saying that. I think it's somewhere around there.
Yeah.
That's why I said like.
Interact, flood.
You can say
flood
anything you want,
on
Hutton, if
YouTube
you
now.
say like 45 minutes.
Yeah, roughly.
So if it's 4
Around.
minutes, then that's kind of like 45 minutes.
You're right.
Maybe it's 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
It's like saying several instead of a couple.
Maybe it's 4.5 hours. Who knows? I'm going to be very vague with it and just throw it all out there and see what sticks.
What stat stuck with you on what you saw from the portal and NIL?
So this is from Dan Wetzel, who just posted this on X. With the Dylan Raiola flip from Georgia to Nebraska official, the top 10 recruits per Rivals are currently committed to 10 different schools. Ohio State, Nebraska, Missouri, Alabama, Auburn, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas, and Miami. And he says NIL isn't the only reason, but it is a reason. Point being, in years past, you'd have, in some cases, maybe 4 or 5 programs represented. That's it with a top 10, right? You'd have Alabama getting multiple top 10 players, or Ohio State or Georgia, all in the top 10 nationally. But Bobby's right. There's only so much money to go around. And to land a top 10 player nationally, it's going to cost you over $1 million, regardless of position with some of these guys. Can't give that to too many high school recruits these days, right? And can't promise that. So what happens? The wealth gets spread a little bit more, at least with the top 10 in America.
So you're right. How is Ole Miss doing this then?
Well, they're doing it in the portal.
But
which is totally different.
But it's also through NIL. It's through their collective. And it's also a program with a head coach that has been very vocal and out front about the fact that he wants to have regulation and caps in both categories. He went on SEC Network in August saying, quote, Kiffin says, I think kind of accepting that you're not going to have a phenomenal culture. It doesn't mean I don't work on it, but I have to realize it's just what it is. One, we don't have many kids dying to be here. They didn't grow up wanting to go to Ole Miss. These transfers go to a place that fits them best, and at that time, it's not about the school, end quote. It's about the money then. That's what fits the most. You can get playing time at a lot of places. If you don't want to go to Oxford, if you're not getting recruits because of the location, You're going for the dollar.
Yeah, it's about the money, but it's about other things too. It's about opportunity to play. It is about the coach at times. It can be about the system.
And you know I love Kiffin, but
the money is the most important part of it. With some guys, it's definitely just about the money. But I think what Kiffin is saying is they're not coming here because they grew up dying to play for the Ole Miss Rebels. They're coming here because they see a chance to start. They see a chance to star in my system, and they see dollar signs. So if you can get the right transfers and dedicate that money to them, you can do it. Here's how they can do it, though, Hutton, and afford it. Go look at their high school recruiting class. They ain't spending any money on high school guys. All that money now is allocated to the portal. So they have taken the approach of, we're not going to spend $1.2 million on a top 20 national player.
Right.
We're going to take what money we have and go get Walter Nolan and Tyler Barron and the edge rusher from Florida that I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because I'd mispronounce it badly.
Staples
We're going to go
crushed it.
get those guys, right? Princely I'll call them.
Yeah.
We're going to go get those guys. That's where they're allocating their money. They're doing a good job with that, too.
They are. But it's just that the coaches who have been vocal about it are the ones adapting to it and doing it well, like behind the scenes. Nick Saban's been very vocal about it. He's got Burton. He's got a backup. He's got a lot of players that weren't getting much playing time at Georgia playing for Alabama. And more power to him on that. But he also wants things to be capped and regulated. Kiffin is on record saying, I really like college because players are so much about where they are in college. A lot of locker rooms, that's who they wanted to play for when they grew up, the passion of the fan base and everything. In the NFL, it's business. I'd say the joy is not the same. Okay. He's crushing it. And Dion is doing it the opposite of the coaches in the SEC, being very open and out and straight with you on, we're doing it and this is how we're going to do it. Whatever. Knowing that Ole Miss is doing it, if it's about Oxford, Kiffin is trying to put that out there. If Ole Miss can do this, if Ole Miss can pony up, we were stunned last year when they gave him $9+ million to stay a year, Kiffin. If Ole Miss is doing this, why can't Missouri?
Well, they are.
Well, but not at this level. Not at this level.
Well, double check those recruiting rankings because Missouri is higher than Ole Miss, and they're one of those teams that's got one of the top 10 players in America coming in. So they're ponying up also.
You're saying from the high school level.
Yes. Look, again, it's all about how you want to allocate it.
But you have to allocate funds for the players that are coming in from high school.
You can't.
That's why Nico's at Tennessee.
You can't do it all. And this is the great dividing line that I'm talking about. Everybody has to decide what game they can play in. Ole Miss has decided we are not going to compete with Alabama, with Auburn even, with Georgia, with Tennessee, with Florida in high school recruiting. Because why? Because Lane Kiffin even said it in his quote, guys don't grow up wanting to come here. But what we can compete with are 4- and 5-star guys who go somewhere else, become disenchanted, become upset with their NIL deal there, whatever it may be, doesn't get the playing time there. We can then go pay for those guys in the portal, and now they can come to our situation.
He hasn't been doing that on defense.
And find that it's greener on the other side.
He hasn't done it on defense, and he's still getting those guys to go to Ole Miss and Oxford when they're being recruited by other. Tennessee's been after Walter Nolan in high school and
Tennessee's not after Walter Nolan right now. I can for a fact tell you
but
that.
But he was
Tennessee sees Walter Nolan as a guy who's only after money. And that was one of the issues with him at A&M. And they are not after him for that reason.
But
that he doesn't care once he gets paid.
Well, are you saying he doesn't play?
I'm saying that there's concerns about his motivation.
Ole Miss is getting guys at the quarterback position to play backup. I don't get it.
That I don't understand. But again, it's all about Ole Miss has got a very solid collective that's doing good things. But
yes,
if you want to, it's about balance. Even the best and richest programs try to have balance in how they do it. What is your percentage going to be? High school recruiting versus transfer portal versus giving your current roster raises. That is the third frontier that no one talks about. Because that is part of this game also. Because guys get mad when younger players come in that you had to pay for and they find out what they're making. So to get guys come back for a 5th year,
right,
a 6th year in some cases, I'll just use Tennessee as the example since we're talking about Tennessee and Ole Miss. Tennessee allocated most of their money to get fifth-year guys to come back to keep their entire offensive line intact and be super veteran across the offensive front. They spent big money on getting a guy like Amari Thomas to come back as a fifth-year defensive tackle. They want to be really old on the offensive and defensive line. Now, in doing that, you lose your entire secondary to the portal, right? You lose a Tyler Barron, who is a starter at edge, but they feel okay at other guys at that position too. So it's a guessing game of how much money are we going to give the current roster versus how much money is it going to take to land the recruits that are most important in high school versus, okay, going to have to spend on a tight end, or going to have to spend on a running back, or going to have to spend on a quarterback, or whatever the situation may be. Ole Miss and Kentucky have just decided to take this thing to the next level only in the portal. They have given up on high school recruiting in many areas, and they are only going to pony up and spend more money than others in the portal.
The difference in what I think Ole Miss is doing versus the rest, because a lot of programs are trying this. The head of their collective is the guy speaking on behalf of all collectives on Capitol Hill, and Walker Jones. He carries a lot of weight, and he's the driving force behind it. And he's got his coach going to SEC Media Day saying that, well, this is bad for college football. Kiffin's adapting. I don't see many coaches jumping in and doing that, adapting well. Where's Dabo in all this? Not adapting.
Again, Dabo is doing better in the high school recruiting department. And if he can keep those teams together and not lose them and just pay for his own roster, he could still have a lot of success. It's just different ways of doing it. But let me get back to an unintended consequence that we've discussed before. If Ole Miss doesn't make the 12-team playoff, their fans are now going to be upset.
Everyone will be upset, though,
I
in the
would
SEC.
argue, though,
Most.
that Lane Kiffin has overachieved for Ole Miss's standards and what they have been as a program, right? So it's not the end of the world to not get in 12-team playoffs at Ole Miss. But he's now set the bar to that, and how he's going to do it is churn his roster every year through the transfer portal. They've set themselves up to do that now. Notre Dame is becoming a program that you can expect a different quarterback in Notre Dame every year.
Yes.
Is that the right way to go about it? I don't think so. I'd rather have a guy start for 2+ years in my program if I had my choice. But if you can't get the 5-star guy who works right away, this is what you have to do. So, Hutton, it is about adapting. It's about necessity in certain instances where you get desperate because you need a certain position or you need a certain guy, and you may overpay for that. And the market, I don't think, is completely stabilized. It's starting to a little bit, but it's all about how do you want to target and allocate your resources. And there's very few programs that just have unlimited resources. Even the biggest ones, they have to make a choice at some point as to who they're going to pay more than others and how that money's going to go.
Or pay another one in the portal.
Or you got to be okay saying, we got a lot of good players in this team. You can walk, even if we really like you as a player, because we're not going to go any higher than this figure. The
1 year and done at quarterback is not going to work. But look at the SEC last season, not this past season, and compare the guys that were coming back for 2+ years. They were flourishing at the quarterback spot. Not great across the board in total this year. Guess who was? The Pac-12. Guys who have been there for a couple of years. Or they
Jay Daniels, by the way,
or they just got great coaching.
A transfer, but how many years was he there? That was his second year in the system.
Second year.
A transfer, but still got 2 years there at LSU to play. It makes a big difference when you can come back for a second year in a system and be around the same teammates for that long. It's a big advantage. And it's an advantage that a lot of programs aren't going to see. Ole Miss had the advantage of that this year with Jackson Dart, who came back, who was the starter the year before. And guess what? They went from, I think, 8-5 to 10-2.
Milroe took some
time.
The
next year.
Milroe took time. It took Beck a lot of time, quite frankly. But Bennett's winning back-to-back
I just think the high wire act and the balance that has to go on with collectives, coaches, everyone to decide what is best for our program year to year. We've discussed this a lot on the show, Hutton. I never even look at the class of a player anymore. Junior, senior, 4th year, 5th year.
I don't know what it means.
Because exactly, with a COVID year, they all get an extra year anyways, but also, who cares? Because you don't know that guy's coming back. You just assume everyone is a free agent every year and go from there. Then you get to see, okay, this guy's committed to come back, this guy's not. All right, where do you need players? That is the same for every college football fan across America. You have spent more time on your team's website than ever because every day there is new news about guys leaving, guys visiting from other programs, guys coming in. Oh, we better go find a tight end, or we better go find a left tackle. That is every minute, every hour news. So it's helped all those websites for sure with coverage of this. But to me, it's not a guessing game because there is strategy behind it. But you got to get lucky at some point, too. Maybe Ole Miss is the one that's going to get lucky by just saying, we're going to throw a ton of money in the portal every year and see what we get out of it.
Their fans will be happy at that point.
Hey, they're winning. They should be happy regardless.
Deion's going to try to do it as well without having all
Deion's
the
got
money
to find
at
linemen
Colorado.
that work out for him. That's the key for him. He's going to win if he does that.
He's everywhere. He's
got
winning.
the skill guys,
He's got to get
that's
the
for
players
sure.
now to win. Join us tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here for Hot Mike with Hunt and Withrow across the OutKick Network.